target, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff. Let's make a start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Canning. I'm Mayor Patrick Hall. It's Tuesday, the 16th of November 2021. I declare the ordinary council meeting open just on time at 6 p.m. sharp. We start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and pay our respects to elders both past and present. Can I ask please that all present this evening turn off electronic devices, especially mobile phones, please. iPads and tablets for the duration of the meeting, especially as they may interfere with our audio recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed on the City's website. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their voice is being live streamed to the public. The remainder of the disclaimer can be seen on screen.
One screen.
Not on that screen.
Because that's broken.
We've got a problem with the screen tonight, folks, so I apologise for that, but we've got 3 other screens in the room. Tenants, as far as apologies, at item 2.1, there are none. I'm pleased to see the full council is here tonight. Proved leave of absence, there is none. Disclosures of interest. I'll ask the CEO, please, to read through the declarations of interest for this meeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have quite a few declarations tonight. I have a declaration for myself in CC 05021, being a financial interest. I have a declaration for myself being in CC 05121, again being a financial interest. We have a declaration from Councillor Holland in C0000821, impartiality. Councillor Bain, CC 03321, impartiality. Mr Bowe, CC 05021, impartiality, and Mr Bowe again, CC 05121, impartiality.
I've also got a declaration that I made just a little while in regards to one of the matters there. Have you got that there? Stacey, can I ask for a copy? Thank you very much. CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We note a declaration from you in item CC 05021, and that being an impartiality interest as well.
Thank you, and I'll ask those councillors and those officers to read those declarations when we get to those items. At item 4 on tonight's agenda, announcement by the presiding member without discussion, there is none. Reports of delegates without discussion. Do any members have a delegates report they'd like to table? None, thank you. We'll move on to item 6. Item 6 is question time for the public. In regards to responses to previous questions taken on notice at item 6.1, there are none. At item 6.2, question time for the public this evening. I'm going to open public question time now. By my recollection, it's 6:04 p.m. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes. Which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will always precede verbal questions. The City has received questions for tonight's meeting from Stacey Bergermill regarding dog parks, Judy Potter regarding the Bentley 360 Parklands, and Mr Bill Prince regarding the tree protection plan in the Castle Dare area. I might call forward, first of all, it's Stacey Bergermill. Stacey, are you here this evening? I'll read the question to the meeting. The question from Ms Bergermill was, when are we getting a fenced-in dog park? Long overdue, ideal place, Ferndale Oval. Anita Emprimo, can I ask the Acting Director to please provide a response?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The City is preparing a draft dog spaces strategy to be considered by Council. Officers will include in the draft strategy potential sites that can accommodate a fenced dog park and the standard required. Following consultation, it is proposed that 2 sites would be put forward to Council in a future budget process to be considered for funding. There are currently 2 informal fenced off-leash areas at Kent Street, Weir Parkland and Willuri Park, noting that these are not fenced to the standard of a formal fenced dog park.
Okay, thank you for the response. Ms Judy Potter. Judy, I can see you. You are here. Would you like to come forward and ask your questions? I have them written down here, but would you like to... I'll read the questions to the meeting first, just for the recording, and then I'll ask Director Sarah McQuaid to my left to just read those responses. The first question is, does the city have a lease on the buildings within the 360 Parklands project? If so, which building? And that refers to the Bentley 360 project. Dr McQuaid.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. The city entered into a tripartite agreement with the Housing Authority and the Minister for Lands in June 2018. As part of this agreement, the city was granted leases for the following assets: the Bentley Community Centre, Bentley Library, Headley Park Toilet Block and Pendana Multicultural Day Centre.
The second question was, if so, what date was the lease signed and when will it expire? There are a number, obviously. The arrangement.
Thank you. All documents were signed on the 27th of June 2018. The lease, which covers the community centre, library and the toilet block, was for a term of 6 years, and that will expire on the 26th of June 2024. Pendana Multicultural Day Centre was leased for a term of 5 years with a 5-year option. The first term of this lease will expire on the 26th of June 2023 and may be extended to the 26th of June 2028.
And the third and final question was, what is the income derived from each building and from whom is it derived?
Thank you. Bentley Community Centre, the city derives approximately $55,000 per annum from annual bookings for the space. There is no income derived from Bentley Library. There is no income derived from the Headley Toilet Block. And the Pendana Multicultural Day Centre, this building is subleased to Silver Chain, and there's an annual rent of $7,766 plus GST.
Thank you, Dr McQuaid. We have questions here from Mr Bill Prince of Bow Street in Wilson. Mr Prince, I can see you there. Would you like to come forward and ask your questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to use my tablet to read them as I've gone paperless. It's in flight mode. So
did you want me to read them for you?
I can read them once I get the frog out of my throat.
You might as well just run through them, because I think the Acting Director, Anita Primo, here will provide a response.
We'll go on if you like to read them.
Director Bride, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Are you going to read the questions? Or would
you like me to, or did you want to?
Yes, you may read the questions.
Okay, thank you. The first question was in reference to the Tree Protection Plan, Castledale Wilson 6107, and Tree Protection Australia Standards and the Law, Getting It Right by GM Moore in the first document submitted to Council. The arborist refers to the encroachment of the tree protection zone for the intervals under 10% and over 10%, whereas in the second document by GM Moore in Table 2 of page 5 refers to the TPZ in more comprehensive detail. Will the Council apply the more comprehensive approach during development that includes an arborist overseeing work encroaching on TRZ, and if not, why not? Director Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Dr Moore presented the paper in 2018 to the National Street Tree Symposium with his personal reflections on the strengths and limitations of an Australian standard, which had been adopted in 2009. That's Australian Standard 4970, 2009, protection of trees on development sites. While Dr Moore is highly regarded in the field of arboriculture, the opinions expressed within his paper did not result in any amendments to the standard. As such, the city and city policies are required to work to the current adopted Australian standard. The current standard requires an appropriately qualified arboriculturalist first assessing the proposed development and various parameters for each tree to be retained. The document that defines the management for trees on a development site is a detailed tree protection plan, which must be approved by the city. As part of the tree protection plan, the arboriculturalist is also engaged as required to oversee the potential for encroachment within a tree protection zone as works are undertaken.
Mr Prince's second question was in reference to Castledale Local Structure Plan, Lot 4 Fern Road and Lots 100 and 102 Castledale Place Wilson, City of Canning, March 2021, Plan 1, Structure Plan, Map 19. There is no reduction in road width. implying removal of significant tree, in brackets tag number 14, close brackets, and the encroach of the TPZ of a larger tree, brackets tag number 14, close brackets. How does Council intend dealing with this situation, or should the extension of Bywater Way into the development not take place?
Excuse me,
Director Bright.
excuse me, Mr Mayor, just
Yes.
one question, one statement. That second 14 should be a 15, so you've got trees 14 and 15.
Okay, tag numbers 14 and tag numbers 15. Thank you, Mr Prince. Director Bright.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The revised tree protection plan dated 14th of September 2021 notes that tree tags 14 and 15 are eucalyptus cladocalx, sugar gum, I think I'll call it sugar gum, which are alien to the Canning River Regional Park, being native to South Australia. Tree number 14 has a trunk diameter of 600 mils, and tree number 15 has a trunk diameter of 1200 mils. Tree 14 has been assessed in the report as having moderate retention value, whereas tree 15 was assessed as high retention value. While the width of the road is determined by engineering requirements in regard to traffic safety, the indicative road layout has provided a wider verge area for the much larger tree number 15. The structure plan notes that supervision by a qualified arborist will be required as part of the works being undertaken.
Thank you. Mr Prince's final question is as follows. While dealing with the asbestos on Lot 4 Fern Road and Lots 100 and 102 Castledare Place, the developer removed at least 20 trees, implying that 60 trees must replace those removed. As there are more than 16 trees over the two sites, is Council prepared to conduct an audit of the trees on Lot 4 Fern Road and Lots 100 and 102 Castledare Place to make sure that any trees removed are replaced under the City's tree and urban forest policies, and if not, why not? Director Bright.
The trees removed as part of the asbestos abatement works were on private property. The City's policy ET 525, trees in streets, thoroughfares and parks, relates to trees on public land, and the City is obliged under that policy, to replant 2 trees somewhere in the City if a tree under the management of the City is removed for any reason. The City's street tree and urban forest strategies outline aims for planting trees on private property, but as strategies relating to land under the care and control of the City, they have no statutory sway in regard to development of private property. Tree retention, removal and planting on private property falls under the state planning laws, residential design codes and the City's local planning policy LPO 9. The recently amended R codes now require the planting of a tree at every new dwelling that will be constructed at Castledare in the future.
Thank you, Mr Prince, and thank you to Director Bride. I have questions from Colette Bishop.
I'd just like to thank you, Mr Mayor, for your...
No, my pleasure, Bill. Thanks for coming down this evening. Colette Bishop from Renew Street, East Cannington. You have a question?
Yes.
Hello, how are you? Would you just like to introduce yourself to the Council and go ahead and ask your question, please?
My name's Colette Bishop, and I'd like to ask a question in regards to Stage 3 of the Southern Link Road. I mean, and the question is how does the City justify the spending of $5.8 million of public money that takes less than 5 minutes off a journey from the bottom of Gerrard Street roundabout to connect to Grey Street that is now known as the Southern Link Road? And have you undertaken a cost analysis of that road as to a benefit of the City? So I'd like to know.
Thank you. Ms Empremo. Oh, Director Bride. Director Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly, in terms of the cost, a large proportion of that cost will be met by Main Roads in terms of their grant funding. The City's undertaken a lot of work around traffic studies in the area. Obviously, the city centre eventually will have an additional 25,000 residents and 10,000 dwellings. And in order to accommodate for that future growth, there needed to be parking and traffic studies to determine the impact. So there has been a lot of work done to determine that a number of linkages are needed within the Canning City Centre to really cope for the additional people. And it's not about traffic per se, it's also about pedestrian and cycling movement throughout the city centre. At the moment, the city centre has got quite a disconnected road network. There's large street blocks, and these street blocks will be filled with quite extensive development. And in order to enable the community or the new residents to traverse the area to access the commercial precincts, there needs to be a legible, more grid-like road network.
Ms Bishop, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. The city talks about the free movement and access to the city, and in the city centre means that do we really need this road? Because recently there have been some changes with the roundabout on William Street, which will, some of the feeder roads will feed into there. Do we really need that? And since the traffic study, there have been obviously some major other road changes, you know, the overpass over Wharf Street and different areas, and I was wondering whether they'd actually taken those into account and when that traffic study was done, and whether those new changes were taken care of in that study.
Director Bride, are you able to provide a response?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The first question in relation to the need, the reality is that the roundabout at Gross and Lake Street, which obviously, as you come over the Gerrard Street Bridge, Station Street will no longer cater for a right out and right in. So essentially that roundabout at Gross and Lake is going to take a lot more traffic, and that has been modelled to fail within a few more years as the area increases in the amount of traffic volumes. In terms of the announcements by the government in relation to the elevated rail, those issues were picked up by the traffic consultant. We had a briefing, council had a briefing by the traffic consultant only a couple of weeks ago,
Yep.
and certainly those improvements were reflected in that presentation.
Thank you. And just your final question?
Yeah, the final question is that in the past 20 years, we've known, or more than 20 years, we've known about this road. And the city has undertaken lots of land use and zoning policy changes. And this road's been very controversial in the community for some time. And my question is so why they allowed these zoning changes? Because if they hadn't have taken place, we wouldn't have had to have this road go through the Claypan. And
Okay.
that was my question. Yeah.
Director Bride.
Through Mr Mayor. Cannington's one of only 10 strategic metropolitan centres in Perth metropolitan area, so it's been designated by the state government to take the majority of the City of Canning's infill proposals over the next 20 years. So because of that, it's an area that we really do need to plan for significant growth. If it wasn't a strategic centre, then you could argue that maybe you could disperse that growth throughout the city. But certainly this part of Canning, along with Queen's Park and Bentley, really do take at least sort of 70 to 80% of the future growth of the city. So that's where the focus on the investment is at the moment.
Thank you for coming along.
Okay,
Appreciate it. Thank you. We have questions now from Mr Peter Evans from Bywater Way, Wilson, I would expect, and that's in relation to occupational safety and risk. Mr Evans, please just introduce yourself and to the council and provide your address.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Peter Evans. I live at 97 Bywater Way, and my questions this evening relate to Local Planning Scheme 42 Amendment 5, which is the Castledare Place Fern Road subdivision. And a couple of questions leading up to that. Firstly, I was just interested to know how the council assesses the risks to residents and stakeholders for hazards arising from new subdivisions. And just, I'm wondering, is there a risk matrix with a probability and consequence, and is there a level of risk that the council deems unacceptable, and how do you ensure that these risks are reduced to as low as reasonably practical? The second question
I'll just get the director to respond to the first question, if you don't mind. Director Bride.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor. Talking about the amendment out at Castledare, that's quite simply a rezoning, so it's the land going from a private clubs and community zoning to a residential zoning. The structure plan has the informing information, so that's got all the traffic studies, a whole range of studies around asbestos management for that site. So those studies will be assessed by council staff and obviously put to council in the form of a report early next year. And the West Australian Planning Commission also does a detailed assessment of all of those studies and plans in arriving at a decision on that structure plan.
Mr Evans? I'll just get the button turned on. Hang on, we'll just get the microphone. I think you might have inadvertently turned it off. That's okay, it's on now. Thank you.
Do I need
Your
to
second question?
Do I need to push the button? No.
Yep, you got it.
Okay, so the second question is with the regards to this asbestos containment zone that is coming from the original owners onto the council responsibility after the revised zoning. What does that mean in terms of extra risk to the council?
I'll refer that to Director Bride. Before I do, I'm going to extend public question time just to allow these questions. I've also got Mr Aldridge and his wife would like to ask some questions, so I'll just extend it for a further 15 minutes at the moment. If we need to extend past there, I'll put a resolution to council. But please continue, Director Bride.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That land that's got the asbestos management or has been remediated, there is some detailed studies around that work that was undertaken. But that land will revert to, in the first instance, the West Australian Planning Commission will be the recipient of that land. All the land that's being vested back into the Canning River Regional Park is going to the state. And certainly from our perspective, I'm sure the WAPC, the state government, would want to make sure, and the studies have shown that the land has been remediated, but they wouldn't take on the land, nor would the city, unless there was guarantees around those reports and recommendations. So that has been identified in the structure plan as remediated land, and the Department of Health and Department of Water and Environmental Regulation have also endorsed that management plan, which is with them at the moment for comment.
And just your final question, please, Mr Evans.
Yeah, just the last one relates to the traffic relating to the new subdivision. There's from Lot 102 a proposed road to extend from Bywater Way, and the traffic from Lot 102 will now go down Bow Street. Just wondering why that traffic couldn't go down Castledare Road and exit onto Fern Road directly rather than go down Bow Street.
Director Bride.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, I guess the detailed response, obviously at the moment we're out on public exhibition, we're getting the feedback from the community, and there's going to be a number of comments around traffic. Some of the issues you've just raised then will have to be considered by staff in the report back to council. So in terms of whether the road should go in a different direction or there should be reduced access points or a diversion of the road, those are the things that obviously we can look at as part of the public consultation process.
Okay, thank you for coming along tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for your responses.
Thank you. Mr Aldridge, can I ask you to please come forward? You had some questions you wanted to ask, I think, in relation to the CCC.
Good afternoon, Council. Yeah, I actually spoke to the CCC this week about the results of an investigation that I'd put in as a ratepayer about the dissolution of the CEO process and whether it was confidential or not. And they basically said, as it was me who made the investigation, it was up to me as to who I told. So if there's any councillors who want to see the request for investigation or the results of that investigation, please feel free to contact me. My first question is, as the request for the CC investigation was made in the name of the local government, is it not up to the local government's management committee, this council, as to whether they keep the investigation results secret or not?
I can probably answer that for you this afternoon. There's been a development just late this afternoon. The CCC have, in their wisdom, given us authority to actually release their letter publicly. Later on this evening, Council will be deliberating over that item, and I'll be moving to actually publicly table it. So it doesn't have any information on it. It basically just talks. Well, we'll talk about it at that time if Council resolves to publicly publish it in the minutes. So if that's what the line of questioning was, yes, it's going to be put to Council tonight, that will be available publicly in the record.
Thank you. I'm pleased that that's coming to Council. Secondly is, why is the Council automatically re-engaging a CEO recruitment company that previously refused to deal with the city CEO recruitment process prior to this Council making a decision as to whether or not to dissolve that CEO selection process?
That was a resolution of Council to do so. That can be undone by a resolution of Council. That matter will be discussed tonight. But the brief answer was that was a resolution of Council. You must also recognise, of course, that Lester Blades, the company that you're referring to, are actually a whistleblower in this matter, and they stepped forward with great courage to actually report the conduct. One could probably make the observation they may not have been required to do so. I'm pleased that they did. Obviously put this council in an awkward position, which now has to some extent been resolved, but that'll be a matter that'll be dealt with by council later tonight. But point taken.
No problem. Is that alleged conduct or conduct?
We don't know whether it's alleged
Okay,
conduct
no
or
worries.
conduct at this stage.
My third question is with the idea of buying your electricity from Walga. My understanding is that you have renewables, electricity going into the grid, and you have coal-powered and non-renewables going into the grid. Can the City of Canning please confirm that if it enters into this electricity buying agreement with Walga, that there will be no total reduction in carbon being produced by that grid?
CEO, are you able to provide a response to Mr.
Thank you.
Aldridge?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The city will not be actually buying any energy from Walga if council so resolves. The contract for supply is with Synergy. The Synergy have to guarantee they'll supply to the city, if it's so resolved, renewable energy.
Thank you.
Okay, and will there be a reduction in the total carbon used to produce the electricity in the grid?
I'll allow the question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In terms of what gets produced each day, that varies depending on the amount of renewable energy that's supplied into the grid. In simple terms, there has been a gradual displacement of emissions as a result of the transition to renewable energy across the grid. There is intended to be a further reduction in coal-fired power, as you're probably aware, next year with one of the Muja power stations shutting down, the Kwinana gas plants shutting down, etc. So this option, if the city so chooses, or council so chooses, would guarantee it a slice, what's known as a strip, of power from the renewable sources. And as they become more and more in demand, you've seen each of the major retailers in Australia now has committed to full providing renewable energy, Bunnings, most of the large corporates. Effectively, coal-fired power will be displaced completely.
Sorry, you misunderstood my question. My question was, will there be any total, if the council go ahead with this motion tonight, will there be any total reduction of carbon needed to produce the power to that grid?
CEO, do you understand the question?
Yeah, I do, Mr Mayor. However, that's a question you'd probably have to go and ask Synergy to what extent they would either displace their production. We have seen now on a day-by-day basis shutdowns in Muja because there's less and less demand coming from it. How that impacts the amount of carbon they offset, that would have to be a question for Synergy, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Aldridge, I understand you have a question you'd like to ask. Would you like to come forward, please, and introduce yourself to the meeting for the sake of the record?
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors, Interim CEO Kane, directors and those in the public gallery. My name is Marnie Aldridge and I live at Minota Avenue, Shelley. Last month's October meeting, the council unanimously accepted my petition that the role and title of mayor is not to be used to promote or endorse council candidates in the upcoming elections. I was really happy to see that it was passed. I'd like to now confirm that as it was accepted in written form, that the petition can now be posted as an e-petition, except for just the one word change that instead of upcoming council elections, that future council elections, so we can actually put it out to the community.
You want the wording of your petition changed?
No, I'd like to put it on an e-petition, because it's already been passed, that we've already had the council elections, that any future council elections.
CEO?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe the resolution of council was to note your petition. That doesn't mean council endorses or agrees with it. It simply notes that you made a petition.
So to clarify, I can actually have an e-petition that the council can note as well?
CEO?
Because it's the exact same one?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As council's already formalised a petition noting it, I fail to see why any further petitions change that position of council. If the intention is to try and get a different position on council, by all means lodge a different petition.
Okay.
But as council's already noted, the fact what you've already asked for, then having a petition to the same effect doesn't achieve anything.
But it's that one word change between upcoming and future elections, so it's for the next election. So that's okay, I'll put it in anyway.
Okay, thank you.
My second question is, with the recent negative press articles regarding the CCC investigation into this council were reported in local media, now that the CCC findings have been received by the council, will there be a statement released to the media to state that there was no evidence of any wrongdoing to stop ongoing damaged community perception?
There will be. I intend to put out a public statement in relation to what has occurred, but to make it clear, you know what, I won't talk about it until council decides to table the information later on tonight, but I'll reserve further comments until that time.
Okay.
Yep.
And my last question is, can the council also confirm that if motion CS03 is adopted tonight, that there's clauses in the policy to prevent the local government from selling or trading any information about its citizens as a whole or individually to any third party gained through the monitoring of its stakeholders? So just to make sure
So all we're doing tonight is just not bringing the policy back.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually making a decision tonight whether or not to bring it back.
Oh, okay,
So all we're
great.
doing tonight is the previous motion by council required that the only way the policy could come back for
That's right.
consideration was by resolution of
But
council.
wasn't that, I'm sorry, just to recollect, I'm sure that policy, wasn't there actually something in the policy say it was 2 years before it was coming back to council?
Yeah, sorry, but just to make it plainly clear, tonight we're not discussing the policy. We're just making a decision on whether or not to bring the policy back
Okay.
for the consideration of council.
It wasn't actually
If
stated
council-
there last time?
If council decides to bring the policy back, then we'll have a public debate on the matter and we can have questions asked about the policy content, but we might be preempting that because
Sure.
it may not be supported tonight, but
Okay.
it'll be up for discussion.
Thanks very much.
I beg your pardon. Councillor Holland, please put your hand up if you want to ask a question, and you don't have your microphone on. You okay? Thank you. Do we have anyone else from the public gallery wish to ask a question before we close? Yes, sir, please come forward. I'll just ask you to state your name and address and for the sake of the record and ask your question. Thank you. The microphone's on.
Graham Campbell, 597 Metcalfe Road in Linwood. I have two questions regarding the City of Canning traffic issues. Since the expansion of Carousel Shopping Centre and the city development and other large businesses opening up in adjacent street, there has been a substantial increase in traffic and congestion on the main roads at busy periods, particularly Albany Highway. As for example, on Saturday mornings I've seen traffic bank back on Nicholson Road as a result of cars trying to get to Carousel, so motorists trying to get past Carousel are experiencing long, unnecessary delays. So to me, there is obviously inadequate parking
I'll
spaces.
just ask you to ask your question, sorry. We can't allow you to make statements. It's
Okay.
just for public questions. So I get the
So
gist of what you're asking. Just ask your question, please. If you
So
don't mind.
my question is, seeing we have traffic issues already, what is the real benefit to residents of spending more money, the 1.95 million of council money, for a single lane road that is only going to increase the traffic problems?
Director? Director Bright?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As I said before, a large proportion of the funding of the road, if council does agree to proceed with the road, is covered by main roads. Certainly you've raised a relevant issue in relation to traffic and congestion. The area is only going to get busier. There needs to be suitable east-west linkages. You've got Wharf Street to the north. To the south, Station Street is going to be a restricted intersection. So you do need something on the south side of the city centre to ensure that in the future you can accommodate the growth in the population and the activity in the area.
Thank you. You have another question?
Well, I don't think that's answered the question. Like, my question was, what is the real benefit to the residents of spending this money? Like, you've already got traffic problems and you're only going to introduce...
I get there, but I'd have to rule that the director did actually answer the question. You're asking for a fairly subjective response on an open-ended question, so can I have your second question, please?
The second question has to do with the railway. Has the City of Council looked into opportunities presented with the WA Government's proposal of raising the Armidale Railway line and what opportunities that has to improve the traffic situation in the area?
Director?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yet the Wharf Street, the elevations to allow the Wharf Street to traverse over the railway line or underneath the railway line certainly does improve traffic in the general area, but Wharf Street is a considerable distance from the heart of the city centre, and we do need the additional linkage through the Southern Link Road, which carries a lot of traffic, or will carry a lot of traffic from the East Cannington and the Queen's Park localities. So it will benefit the local residents of those areas in getting access to the city centre, but also accessing Albany Highway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions, I'll close public question time. Are there any further questions from the floor? Thank you, everybody. Thank you for asking those questions this evening. I'll now close public question time at 6:34 p.m. Governance, can I just provide these to you? Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 7, which is the confirmation of minutes. The recommendation is on screen. The recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 18th of October 2020 and the ordinary council meeting 19 October 2021 and the special council meeting held on 25 October 2021 be confirmed as circulated. The recommendation is on page 4 of tonight's agenda and is on screen. Can I have a mover, councillors, for that item? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A seconder, please. Councillor Holland, thank you very much. Council will put the matter to the vote. October 2021 be confirmed as circulated. The recommendation is on page 4 of tonight's agenda and is on screen. Just hang on, we're having a slight technical problem for that item. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A seconder, please.
Apologies, Mr Mayor.
You sounded familiar.
The vote for the confirmation of ordinary and special council meeting minutes has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. Is the audio recording and the streaming still in order, still going? Okay, thank you very much. At item 8 on tonight's agenda, receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 1, 8.1 petitions, there are none. Item 8.2 presentations, there are none. At item 8.3, deputations, we have a deputation that has been approved by Sian Mawson regarding item notice of motion 010 of 21, and that's the foregoing of grant allocations, removal of funding for the Southern Link Road. Ms Mawson, did you want to come forward? Is this the same presentation? Different one? Okay, thank you. You have up to 10 minutes, Sian, to provide your deputation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening. My name is Sian Mawson from 86 Gibbs Street, East Cannington. Tonight I want to talk about item NOM-10-21, foregoing of grant allocations and removal of funding for Southern Link Road project in Canning City Centre. Before I start, I want to acknowledge and thank the members of our community who volunteer their time to enhance and protect the city's natural areas, some of whom are here this evening to show their support for this motion. The agenda details strong arguments both for and against the construction of this road. I recognise it is not an easy decision, so I thought I'd share some of my thoughts on this issue. Firstly, as we know, Southern Link Road Stage 3 is proposed to join Gerrard Street to Grey Street in Cannington. Its construction will result in the destruction of part of a critically endangered, threatened ecological community. And although 2/3 of the cost of this grant is being funded, of this road is being funded through a grant, the city will be contributing nearly $2 million, which really means Canning ratepayers will be contributing nearly $2 million. Many of the councillors here tonight have previously spoken of their desire to protect the environment and reduce the community's financial burden. Supporting Councillor Sabiri's motion allows you to do both of these things. Supporting this motion means that the threatened ecological community won't have a road built on it, and you'll be saving ratepayers nearly $2 million. Second, in the Canning Activity Centre plan, the whole of the Cannington Claypan threatened ecological community is marked as being an environmental or conservation precinct. This includes the parts within the road footprint. The Activity Centre plan also details the desired land use character for each precinct. The description of the conservation precinct includes statements like, no development will be allowed. This precinct is not suitable for any additional uses or development, and the purpose of this precinct is to conserve the threatened ecological community. It seems that on the one hand, the city recognises and wants to protect the TEC, yet on the other wants to destroy part of it for a road. Included in its reasons against recommending this motion, the City states that it may suffer reputational damage if it has to return the grant monies. That may be true, but as Councillor Bain mentioned in his supporting statement for this motion, what reputational damage will be caused by allowing the road to be built? Aren't headlines in the papers stating council votes to destroy threatened ecological community equally damaging to reputations? This motion also has the potential to set a precedent. The decision tonight tells the community how much the natural environment is valued. If this motion is not supported, it sends the message that any area of natural vegetation can be developed. The Cannington Claypan is a critically endangered, threatened ecological community. This is as close as it gets to extinction. If we're willing to destroy this, then it would appear that we're willing to sacrifice any and all of the natural environment that stands in our way. Councillors, I think that supporting this motion is the safe option for you. Supporting the motion satisfies the community's desire to protect the environment while keeping open the possibility that the road may still be built in the future. By supporting the motion, you can be satisfied that you have not dashed the hopes for either side of the debate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. A deputation has been approved for Ms Judy Potter regarding Chapman Road, crime and safety, CCTV and the Bentley 360. Ms Potter, please come forward. Judy, if it's easier, you can sit if there's a chair there. If you don't want to stand, you're okay. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the voices of concern within the Bentley, St. James and Wilson communities. Needless to say, the events of whatever kind of fire you want to describe it as 2 weeks ago cannot stand unanswered. We feel certain if it was next door or a block away from any of your homes, you would feel the same way. Anyone that thinks our community is accepting it as a one-off incident, think again. We live there. Many in our community have been affected by it, from the elderly neighbor that had lived there for 30 plus years and was robbed while she was in the hospital, recuperating from smoke inhalation, to the families trying to explain to their children. I would like all of you here tonight to imagine the fear and terror small children were going through hearing the screaming, seeing the flames so close, and wondering if their houses too were going to be set alight. How do you explain to them on a daily basis when they ask if the fire will come again? How do you explain that the bad people won't come again? How do you as parents try to calm the trauma and terror because you know or you don't know that it won't happen again? How do you explain and tell your children bad people won't come again when you know there are issues involving bad people every day in your neighborhood and you don't feel safe yourself? How do you as parents explain to your wee ones that you can't afford to move? So when people think the people involved in this horrendous act were the only victims, think again. This is real life in our neighborhood. We are asking the council, with your connections and authority, to get us the answers we seek. We are also asking you to install CCTV in our hotspot areas as soon as possible. We are also asking the council to bring the Department of Communities to the table to discuss their responsibility and accountability for the troubles in our communities. The community would also like me to express their hope that the new intercultural center will actually focus on the needs of all of our community and youth. We are a community that is struggling. We need actual programs that fill the needs to help lift us up. Finally, we are seeking your help to fulfill the City of Canning's 2014 Housing Strategy Plan regarding the development of the Bentley 360 area. It has been the dangling carrot for far too long now. Please do not say that you can't, because you all can. Now is the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy. A deputation has also been approved for Mr Ian Porter regarding EN 026 of 21, that being the Energy Sustainability and Renewable Project, Walga Power Purchase Agreement. Mr Porter, are you here? Thank you. I'll ask you to step forward and introduce yourself to the meeting. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. Appreciate this opportunity to put forward this deputation. My name is Ian Porter. I'm a resident of 66 Mill Creek Road, Rossmoyne, and I'm also the chair of Sustainable Energy Now, a non-profit think tank advocacy group involved in the decarbonisation of our Southwest Interconnect system, a lobbying group for that. I've been through the papers on agenda item concerning the power purchase agreement with WALGA. Just for reference, I have a background in the power and oil and gas industries of 45 years on an international basis, and I've been involved in the negotiation of large-scale power purchase agreements for, in fact, whole countries. What I would like to put to you today is the fact that a number of comments made by councillors assessing risk of this at the last meeting was of little bit of concern, in that there seems to be some sort of fear that there may be a way of getting the council being involved in a contract which would lock them into adverse risk. However, having looked at the numbers and the facts, I would suggest and submit to you that today that a $56,000 per annum over 3 years increase in cost as a sprat to catch a mackerel for downstream inclusion in the ongoing 7-year contract, total 10 years, is a very small price to pay for the decarbonisation initiative that we are seeking. As we have seen in the last 2 weeks, the disaster that occurred in Glasgow, which was the city of my own birth, a disgraceful a set of affairs where concerned parties, Confederation of Parties or Conference of Parties, number 26, has been abandoned. And are we aware that we are living in very dangerous times in terms of climate change? And I would submit to you that this small fee of $56,000 as against a $5.9 million contract is less than 1%. So my submission today is, please follow CM194. CM194 is your own document, City of Canning Sustainability Policy. And I quote, "Sustainability itself is the ability to maintain or sustain something indefinitely. It is applied in this policy to mean the commitment to living within the carrying capacity and resource limits of the planet, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And in the sustainable procurement, the sourcing of goods and services that have the most positive environmental, social, and economic impact across their life cycle. Sustainable procurement aligns with principles such as accountability, transparency, ethical operation, fair opportunity, labour rights, and healthy work conditions, economic, environmental, and social resource optimisation, and innovative solutions." Finally, I want to draw your attention to another clause within this. There are others on systems thinking, biodiversity, intergenerational equity, but the precautionary principle I want to draw your attention to, and that is the commitment to ensuring that when investigation has found a plausible risk, uncertainty or lack of extensive scientific knowledge is not used as a justification for inaction or delaying in addressing the risk. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that we are living in a climate emergency. This is a very small price to pay, and we should consider this when we take the very serious decision to consider the acceptance of a very reasonable WALGA proposal to provide the city with renewable power in exchange for doing away with fossil fuels. That is my submission.
Thank you very much for coming along tonight, Mr Porter. Just so you know, I'm going to bring forward in a moment a number of items, and that will be one of them, so you won't have to wait around for the whole night for the discussion. We'll move on to item 9 immediately, being application for leave of absence. There are none this evening. At item 10 on the agenda, questions by members of which due notice has been given. There are none. At item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. We've got a number of matters here that obviously have interest to those who have attended tonight. Those being the Notice of Motion 010 of 21, the Southern Link Road Project, EN 026 of 21, the Walga Power Purchase Agreement, and Notice of Motion 01121, the Review of Policy CS 03, Use of Monitoring Technology. In accordance with the standing orders, I'll bring those forward, and also in accordance with the standing orders, I'll bring them forward in the order in which they appear in tonight's agenda. That being the case, we'll proceed with the Walga Power Purchase Agreement. We'll then move on to the Southern Link Road Project, and then move to the Review of Policy CS 03. Just give me just one moment. At item 12, we have reports of committee meetings. There are none. Item 13, reports from the Office of the CEO. There are no reports I have from the CEO here this evening, is that right? The first item we will move to will be the item I just mentioned a moment ago. That will be in relation to EN 026 of 21, the Walga Power Purchase Agreement. Let me find it. Councillors, a recommendation is on page 161 of tonight's agenda and is currently on the screen right now. Can I have a mover for this item, please? Councillor Sabiri, thank you. And a seconder? Seconder for the item, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Sabiri, would you like to start debate, please?
Thank you. The timing of this item's aligned with our current contract renewal. The current 2-year contract for energy supply with Perth Energy ends in April 2022, and the contract with Synergy is due to commence April 2022. So there are no requirements for bridging contracts or extensions. We say think globally, act locally a lot. And the entire international community of nations has been setting goals for greenhouse gas reduction since when was it, COP21, or before. But the concentration of carbon dioxide's risen well above the 350 parts per million. That's considered to be a safe level for planet Earth. The current CO2 concentration is approximately 413 parts per million. It's similar to drink driving, basically. Working globally doesn't seem to be producing the desired results we need to reach our stated goals. I believe if the city participates, we will have the capacity to achieve a net zero reduction target within the next 10 years. And considering that electricity is one of the highest emitters of CO2, what a better place to be at. This is the best time for us to join a growing momentum towards net zero. I support the officer recommendation and encourage fellow councillors to do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation. It was sort of put on us quite, timing was quite late, and although I've given it thought, I think that this is what we can do this. I would probably be a little bit more happy if we had some sort of direct action in the future. But I think we have to make a decision. The certificate prices, I think, has already gone up 40%. So even if we were to say we're out of time and we do it ourselves, it's instantly 40% higher. We're doing it with Walga, so we're thinking about 51, 52, 53 other councils. And so I think the economics make sense. I mean, there's only $56,000 every year. Is it a bit funny that we're using coal when we probably have the most abundant solar and wind source? I think we need time to change, and I think this gives it. It's 50% year one, 75% in year 2, and closing out at 100. But I think that, there's definitely a lot we can do when it comes to mobility, mobile energy, aka motor vehicles, and I think there might be some scope. If you look at, for example, the police station just down here, it has quite an impressive solar array. As the price of technology such as solar panels and batteries come down, maybe we could also, this could maybe buy us some time, but I think my vision for the city would be in the future that we can be more proactive ourselves, use some of those technologies. And there's lots of companies now. One comes to mind is Tesla. I've got a Powerwall at my home, and it's just amazing the technology now. It goes off the solar into the battery, stored, and then the artificial intelligence determines when to let it out. So I think there's technology available, and I think one of my thinkings is 3 years gives us time. Technology is always moving, the price is coming down, but I think we need a direction. If we were to say no, well, what's our direction? We don't have any direction. And what's our solution? We don't have a solution. So it's not a optimal situation, but that's why we're here, to make the best decisions with the best information in the most limited time. So I support this I support this motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Does any member wish to speak against the matter? Deputy Mayor?
Can I just move an amendment, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to add a third point, and that would be that 3, request the Chief Executive Officer to present a report to Council within the 3rd year of the contract regarding progress and any future ambitions.
Governance, have you got the wording for that already, or are you?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I just wrote that before this meeting. I can give you my iPad.
Councillor Kunze, can you just read that and tell me whether you're happy with the wording? Is that compliant?
It just wouldn't have interim in there.
Yeah, it wouldn't have interim because you'll have a permanent CEO by that stage.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's all in.
Is that now fine, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah.
The Deputy Mayor has moved an amendment which supports the motion but adds another condition in item 3. It's on the screen. The Deputy Mayor has moved it. Can I have a seconder, please, for that amendment? Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak against a report coming back to Council?
Can I speak in favour of it?
Sorry?
Can I speak in favour of it?
Sorry. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Look, the interim CEO said that with respect to going after this 3 years, that it would come before Council. But I just want that locked in as a Council resolution. There's parts of this item that have spoken about what will happen post the 3 years in terms of the PPA. But I just want to make sure that any decision won't be led by what the Council may have thought or insinuated 3 years ago, but by what the Council thinks in 3 years' time. And so I just want to make sure that there is part of the resolution that an item will come back to Council in the form of a public meeting with respect to what the PPA has done to reduce emissions, and also a formal council resolution as to whether we continue in the PPA.
Councillor Spencer-Teo, have you anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Holland, you wanted to speak?
I just wanted some clarity. I'm not, Deputy Mayor, any future ambitions? I'm not sure what that means.
With respect to this item, so the ambitions with respect to the city participating in the PPA. This is currently signing into a 3-year energy sustainability and renewable energy project.
And the other thing is, if they request the CEO to present a report to council within the 3rd year, so that could be the first month of the 3rd year.
If that's the best timing of it, then so be it.
Yeah, we normally would have, you know, like prior to December or before September, so normally we leave it up to, as long as it complies if it comes up in the 3rd year. Is that your intent? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, within the 3rd year. So even the officer recommendation talks of year 1, year 2 and year 3. This is in that 3rd year, coming to the conclusion of the contract, that a report would be provided to council with respect to, I mean, it was said that procurement issues are often done by the administration. I just want to ensure it comes to council.
Just in relation to clarity, I'll just ask the CEO in relation to the final line.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just picking up what Councillor Holland has said and also the Deputy Mayor's intent. I'd suggest you add the word any future ambitions for contract renewal. That makes it quite clear it's linked to that point. And given a contract renewal period would require probably at least 6 or 8 months prior to that to negotiations, etc., to have started, then you would have also set the timing for that report to fit that process.
Deputy Mayor, will you accept the advice by the CEO?
Yeah, I accept that advice, that's why. And with respect to the timing, that's why I said within the 3rd year, so because I didn't know exactly when within that 3rd year would be the best time for a report to come to council.
Is that it? Future ambitions for contract renewal? Full stop? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please request that in the amendment, that report to be prepared by an independent energy consultant rather than CEOs? Can that be amended?
Well, it can only be amended with the agreement of the Deputy Mayor, the mover of the motion.
So my point is...
Excuse me, just for one moment. I'll just for the record, I'll ask the CEO just to comment. Just
Thank
one
you,
moment.
Mr Mayor. And look, just to the purpose of clarification, an independent party can't prepare a report for council. However, it could include a report. The council report could include content from the independent party. So if you were to go present a report to council that included an independent assessment on the nature of the work or words to that effect, then you'd have what I think Councillor Singh is after, but also the requirement that it has to be the administration prepare reports.
Deputy Mayor, do you have any issue with that if the content of the report comes from an independent source?
Whether it may include independent assessment?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So that includes...
I'll just ask governance to catch up. So where we've got that includes an independent assessment. I think that's it. Deputy Mayor, you fine with that? Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo, you second it. You okay with the change? That's a minor amendment to that. We'll accept that as it is. Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Councillors, in the absence of anyone speaking against the amendment, we may just put it to the vote. We'll put this as just for the amendment.
Amendment to EN-026-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. The amendment now becomes the substantive motion or part of the substantive recommendation. We have had the item moved by Councillor Sabiri, who spoke to the motion. Councillor Jacobs then seconded the motion and spoke to it. We've had no one speak against the matter. Does anyone wish to speak against this item? Councillor Holland, do you wish to speak against it?
I've got some questions. First, it says here that we must obtain 100% at the end of the 3-year contract. I also have been a bit concerned about the speed of this and the lack of time, to be quite honest, to digest all the information. I've read all this quite a few times, but there's still questions. This is a huge thing in my opinion. Is there any penalties if we don't make the 100% in the 3 years?
I think CEO, you able to answer that question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have to transition to 100% over the 3-year term. It's just a speed. It could be as low as 0 in the first year, or 25% in the first year, or 100% in the first year, but it has to be 100% renewal at the 3rd year mark.
Councillor Holland?
That's not what I asked, Mr CEO. I said, are there any penalties if we don't achieve it?
CEO?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, there can't be a penalty because you'll actually sign up formally to hit the target. So it's what you're agreeing to purchase. In saying you're going to agree to purchase 100%, that's what we'll purchase in year 3. So we can't choose to have a lower percentage than 100% at year 3.
Thank you. Hence why I'm asking these questions, because this is all rapid. Now, what happens if the supply can't supply in the 100% in the 3 years? Well, I brought up the other day about what happened in South Australia and went all the way up to Queensland, and you explained the situation here. It's a different sort of grid, as it were, but there still could be inherent problems of that we can't get there.
CEO, are you able to answer the question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to take you to one page of the report which talks about the supply capacity of Synergy. Sorry, just to give me a minute to find it. So if you refer to page 180, so 177 of the council agenda, and you look at the transition to the PPA, you'll see that the capacity, one of the reasons we've selected, or the group selected Synergy, is its capacity to use the renewable energy assets of other parties. So it says, for instance, these assets have been developed by Synergy or a third party. It includes the recently developed 180 megawatt wind farm and Granite Bridges solar farm. So Synergy have the capacity to ensure that not only were there 3 wind farms, which have about the same level of capacity to reach out and acquire the sufficient renewable energy. They have to at all stages, if the council were to resolve to purchase 100%, to acquire the certificates from other parties if they can't produce it themselves. So there be no guarantee of default by Synergy.
Councillor Holland? Can you give the page reference again, CEO?
Thank you. That's page 177 of the agenda.
Paragraph?
It's on what's shown as page 9 of 12, which is the attachment 1, and the reference is transition to PPA, last text box on the bottom of that page. So it's referring to Synergy's capacity to acquire additional renewable energy from non-Synergy owned resources.
You okay with that, Councillor Holland? Thank you. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
Councillor Holland asked me a question before, and I just want the CEO to confirm for the room that we're signing up for a 3-year contract here and not a 10-year contract.
CEO, that's the case, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Mr Mayor, and noting that the new item 3 requires it, but it's the 3 years ago, to bring a report back at that time.
Councillor Spencer-Teo?
I remember it being mentioned last week at the AB that obviously this 3-year contract is within the powers of the delegated authority. It's not? I recall...
No, it's not. The CEO is saying
Thank you. No, it's not within my delegation, which is one of the reasons I'm insisting. For some local governments, it is in their power of delegation, for instance, the quantum being purchased. But if you looked at the total quantum here, it's some $4 million worth of power. I don't have the capacity to prove this. It's why it's sitting here before council, and nor would I have done it independently because of the change. I'd made sure it was back before council.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer-Teo?
That's not what I recall. Sorry. I thought it was
anything past the 3 years, yes, would have to come through council, but that initial 3-year, no?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Councillors, in the absence of anyone speaking against the item, I think we might just put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Substantive motion is amended. EN-026-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We now move on to the second item brought forward for the convenience of those in the public, and that'll be notice of motion 010 of 21, the foregoing of grant allocation and removal of funding for Southern Link Road project in Canning Vale Centre. That matter was carried over from an earlier meeting. We had a procedural motion on the night. My belief is that the matter was moved by Councillor Sabiri, seconded by Councillor Bain, and I think, Councillor Bain, you wanted to actually put a motion to allow standing orders to be set aside for that matter so that we could speak twice on the matter. Is that right?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that clause 7.11 of the standing orders, that is speaking twice, be suspended to permit all councillors to speak on this very important matter. It has been 2 months since the item was last before council.
Just a sec. Hang on. You just need to get a seconder for it. We'll just need to get governance to catch up and type it out for you. It's ready to go. Do we have a seconder, please, Deputy Mayor? Councillor Bain, I'll ask you to speak to your motion, and your motion is just the reasons why you feel it necessary for councillors to set aside standing orders, so those who have already spoken can speak again on the matter.
Yes, Mr Mayor. So it has been 2 months since this item was last before council, and we have 3 new councillors who may not have heard debate on this agenda item. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah, I've been here, although I understand the councillor's intent, the 6 years that I've been here, we've often deferred things, and I just don't want to set a precedent here, because then every time something is, you could almost, well, potentially game the system. You could come this week and we'll speak, 2 or 3 of us will speak, and we'll delay it 2 months or 3 months, and we'll all go again. And so I just think for fairness and of process, I think it's probably best that I'm sure that the new members are very well informed, and they would have had the benefit, Mr Mayor, of listening to the audio recordings if they should wish, and the extensive notes on this area. So I think that they would be well informed, and I think that given that, I can't support it and look forward to the matter being brought on. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I'd also speak against the request on the basis raised by Councillor Jacobs, only that there are only two councillors who actually spoke on the matter, and they were Councillor Sabiri, who gets another opportunity to speak to close debate, and yourself, Councillor Bain, you spoke at length on the item and spoke very well, but each of these councillors here, the new councillors, and all of us who also have had 2 months since the matter was last raised, have the benefit of the audio. The matter was live streamed, and we do not know whether or not the councillors here in the room actually listened to the audio, but in preparation for tonight, I certainly hope they may have. But irrespective of that, I think there's sufficient information contained in the report that I don't want to go down this slippery slope of every time a matter is adjourned for a number of months, and we have another matter coming back next month. That we go about, everybody gets to speak again, and that would mean we all get to speak infinitum tonight. All of us can speak a number of times on the matter, and we could be just going around in circles. I just don't think it's required. Anyone else wish to speak either for or against it? I've just got Deputy Mayor first.
I know I was a seconder, but I didn't really get given an opportunity to speak before. I don't know what the rules are with suspending standing orders on discussions, but Just to cover a few points, in terms of precedents, I mean, through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Jacobs, you've been on this council when we've done this exact thing. We've suspended standing orders to give people an opportunity to speak again when a matter has been adjourned. It's come back, but there's been change in the item and facts have changed and we haven't really had the capacity to debate it, and those that spoke months ago haven't had the chance to provide their updated opinion. I think it's good for debate. I mean, this is a unique situation in which 3 brand new councillors haven't heard from the mover and the seconder. And in regard to my comment, I know that I've moved the same motion, procedural motion, to allow you, Mayor Hall, to speak on an item years ago where you'd already spoke. So I think if you want to talk about precedents, the council has previously allowed this sort of behaviour is not the word, but allowed this through a procedural motion to allow people to have their say. I think it's good for debate. If we want to make correct decisions, then we need to avail ourselves of the information. And why on earth we're going to spend more time on this procedural motion than we would have if we'd listened to Councillor Sabiri and Councillor Bain speak again. I think the point that there's only been 2 people who have spoken should be a reason to allow this to go ahead and allow Councillor Sabiri and Councillor Bain to tell us their views and then close standing orders again and get back to it. But, I mean, we don't need to spend here all night talking and talking and talking. We can just allow Councillor Sabiri and Councillor Bain to provide their views and then put standing orders back into effect.
Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the councillors should be allowed to speak. I think it's a valid point. I think we have new councillors here. I personally have experienced being in Councillor Bain's position and quite frankly, it does suck. So I would always like to have the opportunity to be able to state my case, particularly in this circumstances where we do have new councillors and Councillor Bain didn't have that opportunity to state his claim in front of those people. So I'm for this, so thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. We've had a number of councillors speak against the motion and the same number speak in favour of it. It might be just a good idea to put the matter to the vote unless someone wants to speak. Councillor Holland?
Mr Mayor, I still want to speak, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be speaking against this. I actually, in this instance, agree with Councillor Jacobs. This does set a precedent. We have discussed this before and we've discussed that we're into such an extent that we were thinking that we need to change standing orders. We can't just flip and flop whether we're going to use standing orders for this one, for that one. Because if we wanted to, we could go back to a lot of other ones where it's been requested or people have been upset, as Councillor Sweeney might have said before, when he wanted to speak twice and he wasn't allowed. Now we're letting somebody speak twice, as opposed to not allowing somebody else before. The standing orders are there in this instance. There's, as far as the argument of the new councillors not being able to keep up to date, we all prepare for these, for council meetings, and it should have been, they could have quite easily got all the information that they wanted for the 2 speakers. It wouldn't have taken long. It's 5 minutes each. That's 10 minutes maximum. And I don't think either of them, I'm not sure they did speak for the whole 5 minutes anyway, so it wouldn't have been hard to find that out. But I can't see how we can do this. In other words, we'll be doing this again and again and again and again. Any time that we want to suspend anything, that we can come back and you're allowed to speak again. But some people are allowed to speak again and some people are not allowed to speak again. And we've had that discussion here before. The standing orders at the moment are the standing orders until they get amended. They are the standing orders, so I can't support this one, even though in principle I can see the point. But this is going to set a precedent. Next week I'll be able to come in, I'll say I'll move a procedure motion, I'll speak first, then I'll move a procedural motion, they'll go up there to bring it back in 2 months' time, comes back in 2 months' time, then I'll speak again. And so will all 6 or 7 of the others, if they've already spoken, because I'll put the procedural motion in late. So you've got the potential that 11 of us will speak twice. That's not what we're here for. We're allowed 5 minutes and we're allowed to extend, to apply for an extra 5 minutes at the council's bequest. But yes, I'm not in favour of this at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak just on Councillor Bain's amendment? Councillors, that being the case, I might just ask Councillor Bain just to close debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I reiterate the points made by Councillor Sweeney and the Deputy Mayor and leave it to Council to make a vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, we'll put the matter to the vote. So we're simply voting on whether or not we're going to suspend standing orders in accordance with the amendment put by Councillor Bain.
The motion to suspend clause 711 of the standing orders to debate this item has been carried 6 in favour, 5 against. Those voting against is the Mayor, Councillors Holland, Jacobs, Parkinson and Singh.
Thank you, councillors. The matter has been carried, which now means we'll be suspending that section of the standing orders, allowing those that have previously spoken to speak again, if they so wish. Those two councillors being Councillors Sabiri and also Councillor Bain. Councillor Sabiri, you moved the motion at the previous council meeting, so that doesn't also stop your obligation or your ability to close debate at the end of it. So you can speak, and obviously speak again if you like, and still close debate on the matter. So councillors, the matter is in front of you. We start debate again, not where it started off, but we get to speak a second time if we would like to. Does anyone wish to speak for the matter? Councillor Bain, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be voting in support of this motion and the safeguarding of the Cannington Claypan and the threatened ecological community it contains. All three tiers of government recognise and endorse the importance, uniqueness and rarity of the threatened ecological community that exists at the Claypan, including our own local biodiversity strategy. The local biodiversity strategy, produced only 3 years ago, identifies the TEC in Cannington as being of high conservation value and sensitivity. It describes it as one of the most threatened vegetation complexes and recommends its protection. Given its findings and recommendations on the TEC, as well as its environmental objectives, it is clear that there is conflict and inconsistencies between the strategy, its vision, and the clearing of the TEC to build the Southern Link Road, Stage 3. Past development has already reduced the size of the TEC by 97%. The Southern Link Road, its adjoining footpath and accompanying earthworks, movement of heavy machinery, gutters, drains, etc., will further reduce it and potentially compromise what is left. Regardless of what parts of the TEC might be considered degraded at the moment, the Southern Link Road will be constructed in an environment declared a threatened ecological community and afforded statutory protection under the Commonwealth Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999 and the West Australian Biodiversity Conservation Act 2016. Construction of the road will clear a section of the TEC identified as being in good condition and one of the most intact and thriving parts of the last remaining ecological community of its type in the metropolitan area. A couple of years ago, I lived in the apartments only metres from where the road is proposed to be built. I can attest to the TEC being full of frogs during winter. I've observed bushbirds, waterbirds and birds of prey in and around the Claypan. In 2019, the city employed Ecoscape to conduct a native bee survey at the Claypan. The survey concluded that the Cannington Claypan is considered to have high value as a native bee habitat, with 47 different species recorded. It also concluded that the proposed Southern Link Road will go through habitat where many native bees were collected, and removal of this part of the Claypan will have adverse effects on the native bees with the loss of habitat, pollution and road mortality. Much has changed since the 1990s, when the city first identified the Southern Link Road as a direct link between, and the adoption of the Canning City Centre Structure Plan as a local planning policy in 2013. We've recently received great news that will change traffic conditions in the area, with elevated rail being installed along the Armadale line. This will see the removal of the level crossings at Wharf and William Streets, which both connect Albany Highway and Welshpool Roads and Cannington with Queen's Park and East Cannington. These roads are on or near the perimeter of the city centre, not within it, and with the level crossings removed will provide much improved vehicle access. The Canning City Centre movement, access and parking strategy commissioned by the city is clear in its warnings of future traffic saturation in the city centre and recommends the city implement measures to reduce the amount of traffic and increase the number of people accessing the city centre by walking, riding and public transport. The Southern Link Road will increase traffic in the city centre precinct, bringing in 20,300 vehicles per day by 2031, traffic movement numbers similar to those on 4-lane High Road in Riverton. The strategy also warns that the proposed Southern Link Road will make congestion issues on Albany Highway worse. It is put forward that foregoing main roads funding will likely cause reputational damage to the city. Conversely, we also need to consider reputational damage that will be incurred with building a road through TEC. It is also important to note that Australia is in the midst of an ecological crisis. Tonight, I hope we can give real meaning to those words, threatened ecological community, and save the Cannington clay pan. It would be a decision supported by both state and federal legislation and our own sustainability policy and local biodiversity strategy. We are privileged to have such an extraordinary and rare environment in Canning, and remarkably in our own city centre. As the last remaining community of its type south of Gingin, and for the vital habitat it provides, it warrants special protection, and every effort should be made to preserve it. Saving what is left of the TEC for all the flora and fauna and investing in it for future generations of Canning is a decision we could be proud of and look back on as a significant achievement for this council. Thank you to my fellow elected members for considering this motion. I hope that it receives your support. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Anyone else? Can I just ask, look, I understand that you are all here and supportive, but can I just ask, please, just hold the applause. It's not helpful, and we've just got to get through the meeting, and hopefully we'll get a result not too far. I'm not telling you all off, but I'm telling you all off, please. Councillor Sabiri, thank you.
I'll just have a few seconds probably. Few councillors asked why we are not waiting until this goes to the EPA. We get response from the EPA. Reality is, I brought this up tonight because there's other cities, local governments that are proposing roads and city centres, and they've got areas with high biodiversity values and probably similar to us, but probably they don't have similar threatened ecological communities as rare as us in the areas that they're proposing to develop. But they've gone out and done a lot of community consultation, they've done research, and then putting the environment first, then they've put the plan, the city plan. This has been proposed 30 years ago, and it just doesn't make sense that we're continuing to go along the same line, down the same line. And I think it's not right. Seeing that this project actually doesn't have a social license, and we're sitting on our hands and saying, oh, well, let's wait for the EPA to see what the EPA is going to see, is not probably the best way forward. So that's why I brought this motion forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah, I've given thought to this, councillors, and I'll be voting no to forgo what in its current form. I think we need to wait for the EPA. Then we can make an informed decision, having all the information at hand. Let's not preempt the proper process. It's an important area, whether you think it's a city centre or whether you think it's an ecological area. It's still a very important area, and I think we can't short circuit or just adjust the process because we would like to hurry it up or slow it down. It's an important area. Yeah, it's in the city centre, and it goes back to 1995. I note that the Gerald Street overpass is staying with the raising of the rail, so that means, councillors, the rail is going to drop before that overpass, and that's an important little point. But I'm not arguing whether to put the road through tonight. I'm just saying let's wait for the EPA, and then when we have all the information, look, they might find another, I don't know, frog species or something. Then we'll be able to come back and really look at the information. But we've had arguments that the EPA is not the authority and we're the authority, but when it comes down to it, we have to have some sort of authority and recognition. That's the system that we are in. I might be very knowledgeable about a subject, but you're either a doctor or you're not, and I might know a lot of stuff about medicine, but I'm not a doctor. So I get the arguments for and against, and look, we may be able to revisit this when the EPA comes out, but I think at the moment, and look, I understand that some of the councillors a few months ago were in a different position to they are now, and so I think now that the onus or the pressure to put this up maybe has passed, and let's just, this is not happening tomorrow. There's no bulldozers coming in, it's not, we've run the process, invested a lot in it at the moment. I think we just need to put the process all the way to the end. I'm not saying yes road or no road. I'm just saying let's wait for the EPA. So I will not be supporting the motion to forgo the grant allocations, because I don't think that's logical, because we haven't had all the information yet. Thank you. And those grant allocations are significant. They're not just $1 or $2. And once you lose those grant allocations, effectively what happens is councillors, they go somewhere else. So they go down to Armidale and stuff. So let's just keep our powder dry. And if it comes to that point where we say, look, we're not going to go through that, that's fine. But if you lose the grant allocations now, you're not going to get them. They're going to go somewhere else. Thanks. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Deputy Mayor.
Can I just move to reinstate standing orders, please?
Move to reinstate standing orders. I've got
Yes,
no
please.
issue with that.
You don't need to reinstate it, it's only for this particular item.
Governance's advice is that the resolution of council holds until the conclusion of this item. That's the resolution of council, that the standing orders be set aside for the duration of this item. It's not like coming out of confidential matter. That's the advice.
That's where we've reinstated in the past.
I don't think that's been done by council resolution. I think we've actually done that at the conclusion of the item. I think the way that this item was actually put to council, the wording of it, the way that it was written, means that it holds the council resolution until the matter is concluded. I don't expect any of us to speak again. Councillor Bone and Councillor Zabiri have already spoken. I mean, you can if you like, but I don't propose they will. We can't allow it. Councillor Holland, I can't hear you. You haven't got your microphone on.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, they've already spoken twice.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Does anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Councillor Holland.
I've got some questions, if I may, Mr Mayor.
Yes, of course.
Have we any indication when the EPA report is due?
Dr. Bride.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, we're expecting a decision in the first quarter of next year, so hopefully well before June 2022.
Councillor Holland.
Is there anything wrong with the standing orders and procedural motions if I move a procedural motion to defer this until the EPA report comes in, or do I have to defer it until a certain, or put the motion to defer it till a specific date?
You can move a procedural motion on the matter. It's already been the subject of a procedural motion, but
Being told by Ms Cornish, it's for a specific date.
just stand by just for a moment, Councillor Holland.
If we do it to a specific meeting, which ties it, Karen, to the item coming back to council?
Yes, is to state where in order of business or to which future meeting the debate is to be adjourned.
Okay, but if we link the future meeting to the preparation report to come back to council, that would meet that requirement. Because we don't know at this stage at what time that future meeting is going to be.
Which future meeting?
So the future meeting would be dependent on the date at which the EPA report is. So I'd say to be a meeting after the EPA report has been provided to the city.
Do you want to move that?
Councillor Holland, certainly you can do that if you wish to put that motion. We would then call for a seconder. You just have to give us a moment to actually create the wording around it and for you to agree to that wording.
If I can, first off, Mr Mayor, I've just been reading 10.6.
Of where? The
Of
standing orders you're talking
orders.
about? Yes.
Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor
Councillor Holland, the applicable standing orders clause is 10.5. It is debate on the motion, not the meeting being adjourned.
Thank you. That clarifies, thank you.
Okay.
Well then, Mr
Councillor
Mayor, I
Holland.
would like to put through a procedural motion.
We're just going to word it and the
Yeah, but that was a question. That was a question I asked, can I do it? Now I'd like to submit it. So I'd like to put through a procedural motion that we adjourn this until the report comes back from the EPA to the following council meeting after the report comes back. And then I'll speak to it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The first available council meeting. Should probably say the first scheduled ordinary council meeting. Yeah. To the first scheduled, because we have a schedule of council meetings, so it'll be the first scheduled ordinary council meeting.
See, if I may, Mr. Mayor, can you put down the first or second scheduled? Are you allowed to do that? The reason I'm saying that is, what if the report came back in the week of, let's say, Friday? It's too late to come into this council meeting, and it is the next council meeting, so by strict definition, we would have to do it, which we couldn't do.
CEO, can I just seek your advice?
Through the Chair, as the intent is simply to defer debate on the item, we wouldn't be preparing a report on the EPA advice. We could circulate the EPA advice with comment from officers, but the EPA advice wouldn't be part of this particular agenda item. So we'd try and do it such that would give you sufficient time to read the EPA advice, etc., prior to bringing it back. Through the Chair, the reasoning for that is that we've already got an item before you in debate. So we can't come back and amend that item because what you're procedurally doing is taking the same item and deferring it. So we can give you the additional information and we choose to do it as quickly as we could.
Councillor Holland, can I just get you to read the motion and are you in agreement?
I'm reading a procedural motion that the item NOM 01021 be adjourned to the first scheduled meeting following receipt of the report from the Environmental Protection Agency regarding the southern. We'll have to refer the report back to it. So that would regarding the Southern Link, the proposed Southern Link road extension or something like that?
Regarding this item.
That'll do.
Regarding this item. Because we've already got notice of motion 01021 in there somewhere, so we'll just have regarding this item, full stop. Happy with that? Can I ask for a seconder if there is one on the floor? Do we have a seconder to adjourn the matter? That'd be Councillor Jacobs as the seconder. Councillor Holland, I'll ask you to speak not to the item, but simply for the matter of just adjourning it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm wanting this adjourned, and I've never done this before, put a procedural motion after a procedural motion when it's come back, but I think it is vitally important that we do wait until the EPA report comes back. We've got to have all the information in front of us, and we haven't. We haven't got an EPA report. It's the Environmental Protection Agency. We're going to here to forego grants before we get a report on the very subject that we're talking about. Now, this deferral is doing nothing to alleviate any of the arguments in support of the motion. It's not doing that at all. It's not saying, yes, I agree with the motion, or no, I don't. It's just putting it off until we've got the EPA report. No work will be done in the meantime. Nothing can be done at all. This is just waiting till we've got that, and then we've got a full report in front of us. We've got all the information that we need, which we haven't got at the moment. This is not doing anything to diminish the motion, to diminish any of the arguments. I'm not saying for or against, but I think it's not right if we go and vote on this without the information. And I can tell you now, if we come back to this and the EPA come back and say, no, just as an example, no, everything's okay, we could have done this, or whatever the situation is, so we could have had an informed debate on it then, we will have suffered reputational damage. And I can tell you now that if you just forego things on without having the full picture in front of you, you'll never get the grant again. They don't like it if we just say, no, we don't want this money, take it back. Well, why did you apply for it in the first place? oh, you're giving this money back, have you had the full report on the Environmental Protection Agency yet? And we'll say no. You've got to be fully informed, and that's all this is doing, is just putting it off. Like I said, nothing will happen in the meantime. We're not, no work will be done. It won't have any consequence that way at all. But I can't see how we can do this without all the information in front of us. Councillor Bain gave us quite a lot of information there, what he's saying before. A couple of those were probably disputed from the information that we were given in our agenda briefings and SIBs when they were talking about the frogs and the bees. I think one of them came back and said that there was no new bees or whatever there. They said this new frog wasn't there. I don't know whether it was or not. Was it TEC? I agree, it's an incredibly important thing. It's incredibly important. If you remember when with the AB, I even asked, well, is this the only one that's south of the of Gingin or whatever? And they said yes. So I'm not saying anything about whether I'm for or against this or not. This is waiting until we get the full information so we can make an informed decision to the best of our capabilities. I'll leave it there without rambling on anymore. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs seconded the motion in relation to item 10.2 in the standing orders. There's no debate on the matter, so you don't get to speak. Deputy Mayor, you want to ask a question?
Just for the sake of clarity, it's the Environmental Protection Authority, not agency, so I think I should read that.
A good pick-up. Can I ask you to please change that? Councillor Holland, you fine with that? I thought you were going to talk about the birds and the bees. I'm glad you didn't. Thank you very much for that. Councillors, you have in front of you a procedural motion to adjourn the matter as per the motion by Councillor Holland. There's no further debate on the matter. We simply vote on it. If the vote is carried, we come back after the EPA have provided their advice. Councillors will now put the matter to the vote.
Procedural motion to adjourn item nom-010-21 has been carried with 9 in favour and 2 against. Councillors Bain and Sabiri voting against.
Thank you. Just for those in the public gallery, the matter will be coming back to Council once the EPA have provided their advice to Council, and that'll be at some stage next year. Director Bright has indicated that we are hopeful that that'll be in the first quarter of next year, but nevertheless we're obviously hopeful it'll be in the first half of the year. Thank you for those who have attended. If you'd like to leave, you're certainly entitled to do so. Thank you very much. Councillors, the third notice of motion that we are bringing forward is notice of motion 011 of 21. That's the review of policy CSO3, use of monitoring technology. I'll just find it in the agenda for you. Councillors, the recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 200 of tonight's... Thanks everyone, thanks for coming. It also appears on page 200 of tonight's agenda. I put the motion from the chair. Can I have a seconder please, if there's a seconder in the room? Councillor Hardeep Singh, thank you, you're the seconder. Councillors, I'll just speak to the motion just quickly. This is not to discuss the policy, CSO3, the use of monitoring technology. Our only requirement tonight is just to discuss whether or not Council agrees to bring the matter back, just so we can actually consider whether or not to actually adopt it. Currently, we have all sorts of problems in parts of our community, some of which have been highlighted tonight by Judy Potter on behalf of the community in St James and Bentley, and that community has had long-standing issues for many, many years that all of us know about, I think. I've never lived out there, but I certainly know of those issues, and most recently, apart from all the other crimes that are committed in there that are well documented, they had a firebombing of a vehicle in Chapman Road in the street, and then the perpetrators actually set fire to a house and burned it to the ground. So, you know, at the moment we do have certain areas of the city, whether we'd like to accept it or not, Chapman Road, where the IGA is one of them, that at times would benefit highly from, you know, the provision of CCTV, at least if we could put our mobile CCTV units in there. Right now, the way that the city's policy reads, we can only actually use our CCTV to protect our own assets, which means we can use it for pointing at our basketball stadium, the skate park we just put up, our libraries. We can point them at our leisure plexus to see things that are happening and to protect our own premises, which are all obviously covered by insurance, but we can't actually protect the public domain and provide assurance to people that happen to be living in areas of high crime when there is an issue and a trend is formed. We can't even put our CCTV mobile units there just to keep an eye on the street, and that provides assurance to not only younger families but also to older people that are living in isolation in those areas. And it's not just in Bentley and St James, Willerton area, in Canning Vale and Parkwood. Canning Vale and Parkwood even have their own Facebook page devoted purely to crime in the area, such as the amount of crime in that vicinity. Willerton is the same, as has been well spoken about what is actually happening in Bentley, St James and Queen's Park. So tonight is not to decide whether or not Council will actually adopt the policy. That's not what we are here for, though we have had a number of workshops on it. We've had SIBs on the policy. We have spoken about it. There was a workshop not terribly long ago, I think the 29th of August, there was a workshop that this council sat through to discuss again the pros and cons of the use of monitoring technology policy. So I'm just really hopeful tonight that the council will at least consider bringing it back, because I know that that's what the community expects of us as community leaders, to bring it back. I've said this once before, that it doesn't mean that we made a mistake when we decided not to adopt the policy in the first instance, but 12 months down the track, I think it's been more than that. I'm not saying that things have changed markedly, but I think in some respects they actually have. We've just had a report. CEO, can I ask what was the name of the report? Our community survey has just been provided to council. Was it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That was the Catalysed Community Perceptions Survey.
Thank you. And councillors, as we were briefed the other night, that community survey, the number one issue for this community is around crime and public safety. It's about feeling safe in our own communities. And as we saw on the night that the information was provided to us, it wasn't a close race. It was miles ahead of the second and third placed concerns of this community. So that's our community speaking to us. They're saying that public safety in their own homes, in their own communities, is of high importance to them, and they're highly concerned about our community right now. And I think as community leaders, it's up to us to listen to our community. And obviously I didn't know that survey result would be dropped in the week that this matter was coming back to council. But I'm pleased that it has, because I know this council likes to see at times some sort of empirical evidence to support notices of motion that come before it, and that is pretty much unequivocal support by our community speaking to us as its council, asking for us for our help. And I don't think the monitoring technology policy is going to be everything, but I think at least we should bring it back. And as we've seen tonight, open debate on these matters is good debate, and I think at least we should bring it back and discuss it. If council then decides not to adopt it, I'd be happy to put the matter to bed at that stage. But right now I think we do owe it to our community to at least bring it back and entertain the prospect of listening to those people that are most affected by the crime and unlawlessness that appears in some sectors of our community, as regretful, as unpalatable as that might be. That's it. I hope for your support. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned by Mr. Mayor, our recent Catalyze, the survey called Market Survey, clearly shows us that safety is the topmost priority for our Canning community. As community leaders, it is our duty to acknowledge that priority and do everything within our power to improve safety for Canning residents. Just to give an overview how serious this issue is, within last financial year, there has been 2,312 offences just within Cannington, as compared to 65 in Rosemoyne. The point here is we got crime hotspots within our city. Crime is not all over the city, but there are certain areas where the crime is happening at a very escalated rate. We must explore, debate, and update every policy which has the potential to improve community safety. And the opportunity to discuss this use of monitoring policy, CS.03, is an important step forward to update an outdated policy which doesn't allow us to use the new and improved technology which we can use to improve community safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, I've got some questions. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Of course.
First one, a couple of weeks ago, I think, Mr. Mayor, you came out publicly and said and talked about the city's intention to increase patrols to that area of St James. My question is possibly to Director McQuaid. How many patrols did we actually deploy to that area? How many patrols and how many foot patrols did our security officers make, particularly around that supermarket there on Chapman Road?
Director McQuaid.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have to take that question on notice. I can advise that we did increase our patrols, but I do not have to hand the numbers as per your request.
Councillor Sweeney, anything else?
The other question I've got is, I know there was the vehicle that was burnt out on Chapman Road, and I believe it was left there for 2 or 3 days. Was it the council's job to remove that vehicle? And if it was, is there an issue with why we left it there for 2 or 3 days before we removed it from Chapman Road?
Was that a crime scene at the time, Director McQuaid?
It was classed as a crime scene at the time. We were unable to action any removal of that vehicle until such time as we were cleared to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney?
Yes, so when was it declared not a crime scene?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll need to take that question on notice.
I'll have to come back to you with that one.
Yeah, the reason I asked, Mr. Mayor, is quite simply that, you know, when vehicles are burnt out, it's not a good look for the area. That's the purpose of my question, Director McQuaid.
It's true, yep. Anyone wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Singh and I have spoken in favour of it. Councillor Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, when it comes to people feeling safe in our community, we need to get this right. I feel it's the most important decision as councillors we have to make, and that is why I am speaking strongly against this motion. CCTV won't protect people, and we should stop telling people it will. We shouldn't be spending money on things that don't work. In the past, the installation of CCTV cameras was often seen as a surefire way of reducing criminal activity at particular locations. However, the research and evidence now tells us a different story. The incident at Chapman Road, St James, is a great example. There was CCTV on either side of this incident and across the road at the supermarket. It didn't deter or prevent anyone from committing acts of violent criminal behaviour. Also, the pictures of this incident seen on the media were all taken with mobile phones and not CCTV. CCTV doesn't stop antisocial behaviour, intimidation, substance abuse, which are the causal factors of threats and fear facing our community. I visited Chapman Road over the weekend and spoke with different people, including Mr James Tran, the owner of the supermarket. He tells me the locals aren't the problem. It's the outsiders who come into the area drunk, on drugs, and threaten the community. And there are some important facts for us to consider here. Firstly, there is no evidence anywhere that says CCTV deters and prevents crime. The notice of motion, which contains factually incorrect information, is not helpful in this debate. In the statement, CCTV is a proven contributor to improving public safety and deters would-be offenders. Councillors, there is no evidence to support such a statement. Ask Mr Tran at the supermarket. There was CCTV at that incident last week. It didn't deter anyone, and it certainly didn't add to public safety. Secondly, CCTV has limitations. Studies have found serious reliability issues. For the police, it doesn't always work. The vision is easily compromised, and if it's not retrieved within 21 days, the vision is lost. For councils, federal government grants are for purchasing only, and it's the annual maintenance cost that's blowing council budgets. Thirdly, the CCTV landscape is changing. Everyone has cameras on their phones now. The police are becoming less reliant on council TV because they're getting bombarded with all the vision they need from the public with mobile phones and social from the media. We see it every day. When anything happens, people pull out their phones and capture the vision and post it immediately. No one cares anymore. Everyone is desensitised to cameras. So the investment in CCTV is now changing. Fourthly, CCTV doesn't deter anyone. Several of our cameras were stolen from the Shelley Sailing Club recently. No one has been charged by the police. The drug dealers that stole those cameras have already sold them to buy more drugs to sell to kids. So we're actually giving the druggies more money to buy drugs. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Does the city really want to finance the drug dealers? I don't think so. The fifth point, to date, CCTV has not given us a return on investment. The City of Canning already has 280 cameras operating at over 20 locations. How many times have the police successfully prosecuted someone from our CCTV vision? Well, the answer is 0, not once. The sixth point, don't be fooled by the promises of the grant funding either. How many times over the years has the city or the federal government measured the performance of CCTV? Never. They won't do it. They do not want the community to know. The potential for being discredited by objective evidence may explain why there is no strong desire to conduct and produce any regular CCTV evaluations. Councillors, we should be evaluating the performance of our CCTV before any further investment takes place. To do otherwise is simply irresponsible. The research tells us the cameras are not keeping our community safe, and telling the community it will protect them without the evidence to back it up is not ethical. We should be investing our money in proven community safety strategies like high visibility proactive patrolling, foot patrolling that targets hot places, hot people at hot times, upgrading our lighting systems in vulnerable areas and strengthening our partnerships with the police and other government agencies. The better our visibility is, the more the community will feel safe. This very expensive notice of motion has come before and been defeated. The only reason it has come up now is because we have 3 new councillors who previously have not listened to the facts on this. Decisions affecting the safety of our community have to be made responsibly on all the available evidence. Instead of misleading the public, councillors, with messages for false hope, we should be leading and protecting our community with proven, proactive strategies that work to help our community. I urge all councillors to reject this notice of motion.
Councillor, thank you. Does anyone else want to speak either for the motion or against it? Councillor Spencer-Teo?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor, I'll just ask you to turn your microphone off. Councillor Sweeney, thank you.
I understand that this is not a debate about whether CCTV works or not. It's simply let's bring this back on the table.
That's exactly the...
And I support it 100%. I completely sympathise with residents in the areas of Bentley St James. Even as early as last week, Rossmoyne Shelley had a spate of attempted break-ins over a 3-hour period. I think there was about 12 homes. And when I got bombarded on social media from people wanting to know what the city's doing about it, they took comfort that this was coming to council on Tuesday to be discussed. There may be arguments for or against whether CCTV works, but what I can tell you is residents are wanting this. It makes them feel safe. Even just on the weekend, speaking to the owners of the McDonald's in Willerton, they have been screaming out for us to deploy our mobile CCTV units down there. And our response has always been, sorry, we can't point it at your asset, we can only point it at our basketball stadium. So our residents are asking for this, and I believe we owe it to them to at least reconsider this. And I'll certainly be listening to the arguments for and against, whether it comes down to public privacy, but at this point in time, public safety and trusting in this council to do the right thing for them is the most important thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I speak in favour of this notice of motion. I got to say, a bit surprised, Councillor Sweeney's comments. I mean, it was a few months ago you were wanting to provide our mobile CCTV cameras to the WA Police to assist with their operations, and now we're against CCTV. I mean, Ms Potter's been here a number of times, but for members of her community to be told that we can't assist because of an antiquated and outdated policy, it's embarrassing to sit here in a piece of paper basically restrict whether we can assist or not, or be perceived to assist or not, because a policy restricts use of assets that we already own. I do not understand why on earth we would be against updating our policy to enable us to use the infrastructure that we currently have in a manner that helps our community. If we want to get against investment in CCTV across the city and expending finances, then let's talk about that come budget time. But to be against updating a policy based on your views on CCTV, I mean, it's a use of monitoring. We've had these discussions in the past. I know we've got a few new councillors, but this policy is a broader policy than CCTV. That's why it's not called a CCTV policy. But I know anecdotal evidence when the city's CCTV mobile unit has been positioned in areas where we've had criminal spates, or spates of crime, I should say. It has pushed the crime elsewhere and made those people feel safer. I guess the only difference between assisting certain people in Bentley or assisting people in Riverton is whether or not you're living next to a parcel of Crown land, council land, where we're allowed to position that mobile CCTV camera just because our policy. There is no reason why we wouldn't want to update our policy to allow us to use our current infrastructure in the most effective means. And so, as has been said, we're not debating this policy here tonight. We're debating whether or not we bring it back to council. I mean, I said at the time when we debated that motion that I didn't understand why we're putting restrictions on whether or not we can bring it back to council. And to enable that to do that, we need to pass this motion so that next month we can debate the policy. But we've workshopped it. Staff actually took into account the views of councillors. So councillors that apparently voted against the policy change because they were concerned with facial recognition software. So staff have taken that into account. We did that with the workshop. I mean, we're looking for reasons not to adopt a new policy, and I would encourage councillors to support this notice of motion so that we can look at the policy next month. And as I said, at budget times, we'll talk about investment in this space.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
I've given this some thought, and I just wanted to make a point before I make whether I support it or not support it. I think in May 2020, CS02 was to come back at May 2022 for 2 years, and then CS03 has come on the top of that. So I think we're looking at, I think the council was fairly clear to come back in 2 years. That was going to be May 2022. But I've given this some thought, and I had a bit of an incident when I walked down in the city centre with my young daughter and partner, and I just thought maybe we need to try and do more. I don't know the answers. I don't know how much we can do, but I think there might be benefit of the deterrent factor to say, CCTV here. I know I went down to Mandurah. They had a really bad problem a few years ago, and then they hit their city centre with, CCTV, like the sign's bigger than the camera. I think we had a look at that report last week. I think people are psychologically feeling insecure. Now, I take the points of Councillor Sweeney. I don't think CCTV is a silver bullet. But I was pleased that, because I think the Mayor was away for this one, and I chaired this workshop, and I think we did, Deputy Mayor's correct, the current Deputy Mayor's correct, that we did take a number of views, and I think we had, from memory, you had something about number plate recognition, flagged, as we weren't comfortable with that. And another thing was we weren't comfortable with facial recognition. And I think we just, from memory, we were happy to take the footage but then not process it, and then if the police wanted to do something magical with it, then that's their problem. But we weren't going to do anything with it. We were just... So what I'm trying to say is I think I'll support this, but in December, let's have a look at it. I'm not saying that we have a blank check. I'm conscious of the fact that we have quite a significant budgetary constraints, but and especially, you know, St James, that is in my ward. You've got some areas that are we really need to. We might not have all the solutions, but we sort of need to open the reserve up. And I think maybe as technology evolves, maybe our policy may need, I think the previous policy has served us well. But yeah, so I'm just, at the moment, Mr Mayor, I'm just saying I support this to have a look at it, what that is and how we implement it and how much resources we allocate it. That's a discussion for another day. But as the words here, I support. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak against it? Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, I've got a couple of concerns which are questions, so if you could stop the clock for the moment, please. I was wondering how the resolution on motion CSO2 has now morphed into CSO3. I was wondering how we're saying we've brought back CSO2, which was mentioned by you, Mr Mayor, and a couple of others, when we haven't brought back CSO2 whatsoever. We've got in CSO3, and you've said that as a matter of course, then CSO2 would have to be rescinded. I can't see how this policy has been morphed into something that it wasn't and was against a council resolution. We haven't brought back CSO2. It's not here and it says so.
Director McQuaid.
Sorry, Councillor Holland, what's your question?
How did this morph into a CSO3, and how can you rescind a policy you said would need to be rescinded to prevent a conflict with provisions of CSO3 if CSO3 goes in, when CSO2 resolution from council was quite specific and this is not bringing it back in? So how can you rescind a motion that is not allowed to come back in until 2022? I don't know how you morphed this into CSO3, and I'd like to how you can explain that.
I think yep, Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, the resolution of May 2020 stated that Council reviews policy CSO2, closed circuit television systems, every 2 years, but not earlier than 12 months after a local government ordinary election, unless Council resolves otherwise. So we are bringing, the Mayor has moved a notice of motion to bring policy CSO3 back for further discussion, which he can do. And if Council resolves otherwise should this item be brought back to Council in December, Council will have the option to resolve, to adopt that policy and to rescind CSO2.
Just so that I'm clear on this, so you're saying that the motion to bring back CSO2, and you're saying this is a motion to bring back CSO3, not CSO2.
This notice of motion asks us to bring back CSO3, which we are doing. If Council resolve, as per the resolution, to bring that back to Council next month, then Council can consider then CSO2 as well.
When was CSO3 first, and when did we resolve to bring it back? Bring it back from where? CSO2 we deferred, not CSO3.
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor. My miswording, Councillor Holland. The NOM requests that proposed policy CSO3, use of monitoring as workshop for Council, is brought to the December 21 Ordinary Council meeting for consideration.
Therefore, this is not bringing back a policy whatsoever.
It doesn't say it's bringing it back.
Yeah, but you said it was, Mr Mayor. You did, and so did a couple of other people. All we're trying to do is bring that thing. That was your words. So let's be clear on it. It's not bringing back anything. This is bringing CSO3, which is not CSO2. To be quite honest, to make a statement, I don't think that the way this is done, that CSO3 will rescind a motion of council is appropriate. I don't like that at all. I think it should be that CSO2 is CSO2 and CSO3 is CSO3.
You need to ask a question if you want to ask a question.
All right, Mr Mayor. Well, I'll leave that and I'll speak if I can. And,
yep, of course.
Thank you. I've been against the policy of the city having our own cameras pointing at private property or private buildings. I don't think this is our domain, and I brought this up before and I'll stay with it. The mention was before with the car that was on fire that it was a crime scene. What is a crime scene? It's a crime scene stipulated by the police. It's a police matter. What is crime detection? You've got in here crime detection. Crime detection, crime is a police matter. You've got here criminal behaviour. Criminal behaviour is a police matter. It's not a council matter. Our rangers have got no rights anyway to apprehend or stop anybody anyway. They've got no rights whatsoever. Whether McDonald's would like our cameras pointed at them, why haven't McDonald's got their own cameras? I would be saying. The use of monitoring technology was brought up that it's not actually about closed-circuit TV. If you read through all this here, you go through just about every part, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, it's just about talking about CCTV. 17, the resolution says on the closed-circuit TV. That's what this is about. It is about CCTV. Let's just not beat around the bush. That's exactly what it is. I'm against this purely and simply because I don't think it's in the domain of council to be pointing our cameras at something that are not our assets. We are not the police. I'm very much in favour of having cameras around our own assets, whether it's the basketball stadium or our own roads or the library or the cricket club or the change rooms or whatever. I haven't got a problem with that. I just don't think that we've got the right to put our cameras into the private domain. And then we've got to think, well, where do they go? Who chooses where they go? There has been a bit of antisocial behaviour, for want of a better word, at the Willetton Sports Ground up there where the sheds are up the back, so which has been quite dramatic. So do we put them up there as well? Do we put them outside on the road to see who's coming into there so we can see it from the other side? Do we put them in St James where there obviously is a bit of an issue? I agree with some of the stats you said before that you said, Councillor Singh, there are hot spots. I totally agree. There probably are. A while ago, Willetton had quite a few break-ins, so do we put CCTV cameras down every street in Willetton, and whose street do we put it in? And like I said, this is not our domain, it's not our thing, this is a police matter. And I'm listened to Councillor Sweeney before with what he was saying before, and whether do they really work or not, I don't know. Thank you, Mr Mayor, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Councillor Sabiri?
I was initially in favour of bringing this back because I thought it might be a good thing, but now just listening to a few discussions around the room, I feel that bringing CCTV into making it our responsibility is not the right thing. I was just looking right now. We already have a $19 billion police budget in Australia. So that means that's already going from our taxes. Our taxes are going into that police budget. So we're already paying money towards, criminal behaviours, those sort of issues. So do we again want our ratepayers to pay more rates for CCTVs? I mean, yes, we're going to get probably a grant now. It's going to last a couple of years, but then we have to maintain these CCTVs. So I don't think it's our responsibility. I agree with some of the comments made around the room, and don't think we should bring this back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak before I close debate? Thanks, councillors. I'll just close debate on the matter. Look, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. We're not just here to discuss the implementation of CCTV tonight, or where it'll be placed or how it'll be funded. We're simply discussing as a council whether or not to review policy CS03, which is the use of monitoring technologies. I have to disagree with some of the things mentioned previously. Look, it is our responsibility. I think all of us need to work collectively, and that's why we've got rangers here employed at great expense to the city. I think if we asked ratepayers whether or not they would want their rates slightly raised to provide a more secure platform in areas within the city, I think to a person, I think they'd probably agree. We have got significant issues here. It's not about St James has a bit of an issue. Councillors, I remind you, we've had 2 murders here of elderly people in the last 2 years. One of those crimes was solved by CCTV at a local railway station. There are portions of the
Point of order, Mr Mayor, this is rebuttal.
And it is. And I was told that this is not our not our domain, and you said St James has a bit of an issue, and I'm saying we've got way more than a bit of an issue.
Bringing up a murder is not rebuttal.
I'm not going to argue with you, but you said that we've got a bit of an issue, and I'm rebutting that, saying we've got far more than a bit of an issue. I'll move on. As far as return on investment, I don't think any of us here really believe that monitoring technologies, and whatever that might be, really needs to have a return on investment. If we're working on the return on investment proposition, I think we'd probably be considering as a council closing our leisure plexes and closing our libraries, which are not a return on investment, but there's such a huge community benefit, a social benefit. But there's no social benefit greater than people feeling safe in their homes. Councillor Sweeney's argument in relation to CCTV doesn't protect people, and I do take his point. I know what he's trying to say. But that flies in the face of the reality, which is that a lot of people in the city of Canning and right across Western Australia are spending great deals of money they probably don't have to implement and install CCTV in their own houses, praying that that will provide them with some semblance of safety and community safety and assurance. That's why they do it. And they're not doing it because it's wrong. They're doing it because they are crying out for assistance, and they feel that CCTV in some respects will provide that assurance. So tonight we're only making a decision not on funding or placement or any of those things. We're certainly only discussing whether or not to bring it back. There are a lot of good points made tonight. I'd like to think as a council that we would listen to our community and that we would at least bring the matter back for discussion, because many of you around the room are ward councillors in areas that are really presently in dire need. I'm not going to harbour any more on it. I think I've certainly said enough on the matter. I think my opinion is well known. I'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion nom-011-21 has been carried, 8 in favour, 3 against. Councillors Holland, Sabiri and Sweeney voting against the motion.
Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 13.2, the responsible officer being Director Warren Bowe. It's CC 041 of 21, complaints policy for council members, committee members and candidates. This matter has been brought back to us tonight. I'll just read where we're up to here. The agenda's substantive motion is amended. It was moved by Councillor Sweeney, seconded by Councillor Barry, and the recommendation, I think, is currently on screen. Option B was moved and amended by Councillor Sweeney, and that amendment was seconded by Councillor Barry. Councillor Barry spoke to the motion. Deputy Mayor Jacobs spoke for the motion. Councillor Spencer Teo spoke against the motion. Councillor Kunza spoke against the motion and advised he would be foreshadowing a motion if the matter under debate was lost, and that foreshadowed motion still carries. I then spoke, and I spoke against the motion. And Councillor Holland moved a procedural motion at that stage to adjourn a debate on the November OCM. So there are a number of councillors that haven't actually spoken at all on this matter, and I'll invite them. We'll start the debate where we left off. Does anyone wish to speak on the matter? Councillor Holland?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'll be speaking against it. I suppose I could say we could suspend standing orders and let everybody speak against a second time. But I won't be, I can't support this. I can't support where we're going to have, going to be subjected to scrutiny by my peers in that respect, whether the decision is going to be made. That's not what I decided to come to. Part of my desire to become a councillor was. I think it's flawed. I don't like it at all, the way it's written, and the consequences are actually quite dire. I'm glad we had the workshop. It gave us all a bit of an opportunity to ask questions and get further information, but I'm not going to speak long. I still can't support it. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'd like to propose an amendment from the Chair. At the moment, the matter before us is to consider option B. I think we should be looking at option A, and I'll give the reasons for that. I'd like to put an amendment, please, Governance. The amendment will be in relation to the current complaint policy. The Council considers option A. That being the case, if option A was supported by Council, we'd be looking to delete item 2 of the recommendation, which would then require Council to bring back terms of reference for the Complaints Committee.
Mr Mayor, that's not an amendment, that's an alternate motion.
The intent is exactly the same. It's just that instead of having a committee, the two policies are exactly the same. The only difference is that one has a committee of Council and the other one doesn't have a committee of Council.
Which is a significant difference between the two.
I wouldn't think the intent would be completely different.
I recommend you debate this one, and then if it's lost, you put up the alternative.
Okay, I accept Governance advice. We'll continue with a debate as we previously have undertaken. We're still discussing the matter at hand. Councillor Holland has just spoken against the matter. We still have the foreshadowed motion here if this matter is lost. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this matter before we put it to the vote? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that Deputy Mayor Kunz's foreshadowed motion is still live.
Yes, it's still live on the table. And then what actually happens with that, when Deputy Kunz's foreshadowed motion, if the foreshadowed motion comes into play, it would then, after we go through a certain preamble, would become the substantive motion, and then obviously it would then be available for amendment as per any normal motion. Councillor Holland.
Just, Mr Mayor, I think maybe to explain how that works to the new members, or do you all understand it? Exactly what that
good
means.
idea. I'll just explain it. So what's actually happened at the moment? We have a motion at the moment. We have had a number of councillors have spoken against it, and I think a number have spoken in favour of it. Councillor Kunza at the last council meeting, before this was actually adjourned, put what's called an alternate motion, which is contrary to the intent of this current motion. And what it means is, if we all vote against this matter tonight, which is option B, if we decide that's not a good option, and right now I've been told by Governance, I accept their advice, that my amendment can't be put, we will then go to the alternate motion put by the Deputy Mayor. And what I might do is that actually can I get that up on screen so that the new councillors can actually see what the alternate motion is? I think that would be appropriate given the circumstances. What it essentially means is that Council has a fallback position. If we decided to vote against the resolution as we have it, which is option B, we then actually will then vote on and debate again on the motion, the alternate motion proposed by the Deputy Mayor. And at that stage, that alternate motion is open to the same rules of debate. We can actually then pass amendments on it or proceed with it as is. Deputy Mayor?
Can I just clarify, Mr Mayor? I know you heard the advice, but my understanding in looking at the two attachments is that your amendment is just changing 2 to 1 or 1 to 2. I can't remember which one. And in terms of the attachment. And both policies are remarkably the same and have the same intent. They're just whether or not they have a committee attached to them or not. I'm just wondering what was the advice? Why does it need a foreshadowed rather than an amendment?
Governors, can I get you to explain your position? Because I must say that I guess it's my role to actually make the final ruling on that, but I'm struggling myself to understand how one policy has a different intent over the other. Both are identical other than one has a committee.
Through you, the Mayor. The Mayor proposed to change the policy, but he also proposed to delete part 2 about the formation of the committee. That has different intent by then removing that request for a committee of council. So in my view, not only are you changing the policy, but you are then deciding to then no longer proceed down the path of forming a committee.
Deputy Mayor, I accept the advice of governance. I think we can still end up with the same result if the matter is actually, depending on the vote of the council.
Your alternative becomes the third one in the sequence if this isn't catched up. The foreshadowed motion doesn't get up, your motion comes.
Okay, so that'll be the case then, governance, that my motion will become a foreshadowed motion, is that right?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It will be, yes, if you wish to proceed with it as a second foreshadowed motion. So the deputy currently has a foreshadowed motion on the table. So if the motion currently under debate is lost, the deputy's foreshadowed motion will then become a substantive, providing it's moved and seconded. If that was lost again, then the mayor's foreshadowed motion would then be considered.
Deputy Mayor.
Not taking anything for granted, I don't know how a number of councillors are going to vote. I'd like to move an amendment to delete part 3.
That's in relation to, subject to the policy at attachment 2 being amended so that all references to vexatious proceedings be removed. So that was an amendment put by Councillor Sweeney at the last council meeting, and that was supported at that time. Can an amendment that was a resolution of council be amended again?
To debate the amendment now. It was included and voted on, wasn't it?
The Deputy Mayor's put an amendment to the substantive motion, and the amendment is to delete part 3 of the recommendation, which would be then to remove, which then has asked for the amended attachment to be amended so that all reference to vexatious proceedings be removed. Which means that the references to vexatious proceedings would then be included in the policy. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Spencer, Teo. Councillor, Deputy Mayor, I'll get you to speak to your proposed amendment, and can I just ask you just to keep it to only your reasoning behind removing item 3?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Obviously, much has changed since we last dealt with this matter, including having a workshop on this matter. We spoke about a few issues and how the vexatious conduct and what actually happens and what issues there are by taking the vexatious nature out of the policy. But also, if you've seen within the last week, the Department of Local Government's provided its updates to the Local Government Act and the new regs that will come through. And one of the, I guess, main aspects is vexatious complaint referrals. So last time we discussed this, councillors were asking, how do you define someone as vexatious? What happens if someone's just passionate about an issue, as Councillor Holland was with the Willerton Childcare Centre. But now it's actually proposed to actually have a formal process in terms of identifying someone that is deemed vexatious. In fact, they'll have an inspectorate, and the CEO will have the power to refer people that are deemed vexatious to the inspectorate for consideration. So not only do I think that we've previously had discussions within the workshop about the important nature of having this clause in there, but also for those councillors that previously were concerned with whether people had a legitimate issue but kept banging on about it and were found out to be vexatious, there's actually now proposed to be an independent umpire that will assess that. And, as is always the case, if you're unhappy with a decision of a local government, you can take it to the Ombudsman as well. But I think it's important to have that within the policy, and so I think, especially given in the last week with these vexatious complaint referrals, that it's prudent to make sure it's included in the policy.
Councillor Spencer Teo.
I 100% agree and couldn't put it any better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a fly in the ointment here, because after the conversation just recently had with you, Mr Mayor, it got me thinking. Bearing in mind the potential for later criticism of undisclosed impartiality here, I think it would be fair to say that if any councillor is currently the subject of any complaint that is before any standards panel, SAT, WOLGA, or involved in any other legislative action or civil litigation process with any ratepayer, then there is an obvious bias for those councillors to vote on this motion. And I think in this position, a conflict of interest should be declared.
Noted. Anyone else want to speak for or against the matter? Councillor Holland?
Yeah, I'd like to know how we can amend number 3 when it's already been put through to put number 3 in as an amendment on the first place. It's already been voted on. We can't do this. How do you do something? We've already voted on this. We amended it to put it in, and now we're amending it to take.
Just stand by.
You can't do that.
We're having a discussion. I think we can do it. We did. Councillor Holland, just speaking to the CEO and also to governance here, and just from my own knowledge of the standing orders allow for as many amendments as one would make. So we previously voted on an amendment. The substantive motion can be amended as many times as one would like, and we also have different personnel in the room now than we did. We think it's appropriate that we allow it. That will be the ruling on it.
Mr Mayor, I'd like it noted that I totally disagree with this. You cannot amend, the amendment was made there to put this in.
Can you provide a reference? You're saying you definitely can't. Can you tell me how?
Well, no, I can't see how you... The amendment was to put this in.
Yeah, but what
and
I'm
now
saying
we're doing an amendment to take it. We've already voted on it. You can't vote twice.
Yeah, but you're saying you can't vote twice. Can you give me the evidence that we can't vote twice? Where in the standing orders does it say we can't vote twice? You can't just say we can't vote twice. You need to tell me. We're telling you that the standing orders allow for amendment after amendment of a substantive motion.
I agree with your amendment. You can amend and keep on amending, but this one was voted on.
Yeah, so we're not rescinding...
It was a resolution of council, and you can't go back on a resolution of council.
The resolution of council is a substantive matter once it's adopted by council. The amendment only becomes part of the substantive motion. Once the substantive motion is put to the council, then we would need to rescind the motion to actually to effect a different outcome. This is only an amendment. So council resolved to amend it. Now council can resolve to amend it in a different way. And we can do that all night if we like, but the standing orders are clear that we can actually, any person, up until the time that the close of debate occurs, can...
I understand, thank you, Mr Mayor, and I won't keep arguing either, but how is this an amendment and not a negation?
Because it isn't...
It negates it completely.
It's an amendment to a substantive motion. It's not a standalone motion. We're not negating a motion.
Yeah, you're negating part 3 of it.
No.
Go on, just give me clarification on it.
Okay.
So that we're all on the same page.
Yep, we note your comments. Anyone wish to speak either for or against the amendment? The amendment is only to remove part 3 of the amendment. Look, I'll just speak quickly in favour of it. I don't think I need to say too much on it. The Deputy Mayor is absolutely correct. Since we last had that conversation, things have changed remarkably. Only this week, last week, John Carey, the Minister for Local Government, announced sweeping reforms, and this would actually align what we're doing tonight to what the Minister is proposing in those reforms. And we finally have some clarity around how vexatious complaints might be dealt with and how vexatious complainants might be assessed and what the criteria might be. So I think we've been pretty much the City of Canning at times a step forward of the local government department in respect to a number of things. We proposed and actually implemented the live streaming of meetings. It's now becoming a mandated requirement by local government. We did that before we were required. We've been pretty good at aligning ourselves to all manner of reforms. And I think that this follows that we should keep it in. There's plenty of guidance here, and I think at some stage, and the good thing is too that the manner of a vexatious complainant won't be decided by any of us in this room, but we can then refer that matter to an independent person who will make an assessment on whether or not that person or those complaints are vexatious. So it's not like we're going to decide in this room. We've certainly just got a policy that just allows us to align what we're doing to state government. So don't be under any misapprehension. We're not actually going to decide in this room who is or who is not vexatious. That will be done by an independent body, and I think that's a good thing as far as accountability goes and also transparency, and I think that's what our community would expect of us. In the absence of anyone else wishing to speak on the matter, I might just put it to the vote. So this is, Deputy Mayor, this is for the amendment. Did you wish to close debate? You don't? Okay, and this is only for the amendment, and the amendment is, as you can see on screen. We'll put the matter to the vote.
The motion for Amendment 2 to remove Part 3 of the substantive motion has been carried to 7 in favour, 4 against, with councillors Bain, Holland, Jacobs and Sweeney voting against.
For the benefit of the council, is there anyone else that wishes to speak either for or against the matter before we put it to the vote? Councillor Sabiri.
Just a question. So this one
is almost identical to option A, except that option B includes a committee. So it means that we would need to form a committee of council, and the committee of council would actually to itself. We would then report to the council. So option A is almost the same, except it takes out that step about a committee of council, and it means that the investigator basically will provide. We have the option at the moment that you're voting on is whether or not to support option B, which includes the committee of council.
The committee would exclude any members who were otherwise named in the complaint.
Yes, and of course the committee would be made up of people that would be, councillors would be excluded if they were a party to the complaint. Look, in the absence of anyone else wishing to speak on the matter, I have Councillor Sweeney, you originally moved the matter, the substantive motion. Councillor Barry is no longer here, but you moved it. You're certainly entitled to close debate on the matter if you like, and that would be in relation to speaking in favour of option B, or you can elect not to debate it, not to close it.
Yeah, I'm still getting over how we can remove item 3 at the moment, so I've got nothing further out at the moment.
Okay, thank you, councillors. That being the case, then debate is closed on the matter. We'll put this matter to the vote. If the vote is not supportive of the substantive motion, we will move to the first of the alternate motions, which were by the first of which by Deputy Kunza. Thank you, councillors. Put the matter to the vote.
Substantive motion as amended CC-041-21 has been lost, with 9 voting against and 2 councillors voting for. Councillors voting against the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, Councillors Holland, Jacobs, Parkinson, Sabiri, Singh, Spencer Teo and Tuchek.
Thank you, councillors. We will then move to the alternate motion put by the Deputy Mayor. Governors, can I just ask for that to be brought up at your
Mr. Mayor, before it's actually put to move, I provided an updated version that was slightly improved in terms of its intent earlier today.
Okay, Governor, so do you have a... Deputy Mayor, are you happy with the wording of that? Is that the wording provided by you? Do I have a seconder for the... thank you. Councillor Jacobs is the seconder. Deputy Mayor, did you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I can't really remember a lot of what I said a few months ago, but my concerns still remain with this, what's been provided. From what I've seen about the updates provided over the last week that I referred to before with vexatious conduct, that a lot of this will stay. I think, within a month or so of this getting introduced, I know Wanneroo had some issues. Councillor Holland mentioned before about being judged by one's peers, and I just think that, I think last time I said it was basically using a nuke to kill an ant. I just think that this process causes, or this code of conduct process causes more problems than it will solve. How you ever get over somebody that you sit with making a formal complaint against you, and given that it's generally benign issues, I don't think it's going to lead to better behaviour, but lead to more divisions if we're going to have to go down this path. So I think that we need to put it strongly towards the government that we do not want to accept this model, this process. It was put, I think, by Wowger and that the department's looking at changes to the Victorian model, and the Minister said that, and it takes quite some time. The local government model code of conduct regs are created through subsidiary legislation. They're a form of delegated legislation. The regs with respect to the model code of conduct can be changed by the Minister extremely quickly. It doesn't need to go through a couple-of-year process. And so I think that that's what the message we should be sending. I also, as I said last time, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I still, to this date, don't understand why there's a complaint system for local government elected members but not for federal state members of parliament. I say state members of parliament because they're the ones that put these code of conduct, these systems in place for elected members. And I guess we often talk about leading by example to our community. And I think if they think that this should apply to local government elected members, then they should implement a similar system for state government members of parliament. The reason for my change to wording is because previously I spoke about it didn't really separate between state and local, and obviously there's different acts of, there's different legislation in place and different, a lot of different things. So I think that it needs to be applied separately if they were ever to do that, but I suspect that if they were going to put in a system for themselves, they wouldn't put in one for us. Anyway, I've said enough on this.
Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it's what we were given was very. I was very disappointed with it, and I think it had the ability to consumer counsel against itself. I thought it was a way of almost cost shifting from the state to us, and then the more we fight, the more the bill would be. So I think this is actually a pretty good solution, because we're saying, well, hang on a minute, we're not happy with it. It's not working, and 2B is actually pretty smart too, because you know, a lot of the laws that, well, most of the laws that we have to abide by are from the state government, so it would be good. They're actually professional politicians. A lot of people, obviously, a lot of us, you know, we have other jobs, and I do take the Deputy Mayor's arguments that it's very onerous on us. We seem to be very over-regulated, and you can't do this and can't say that. And yeah, I think this is probably, I feel the most happy with this, Mr Mayor. The other one, I didn't feel happy, and we've workshopped this, and I just can't see how it could work. And I think it's probably best that we do this, because I don't want to take up a system and then we have to be, you know, judges and stuff against our own colleagues, and it's just, I don't think how it could work. I don't think it could work on state level, and I don't think it could work in the federal parliament either, because then you're basically wanting a parliament to be a court. And I think in Australia we take a lot of pride in deliberating the government, parliament, and the courts and the justice process. So I think this is good. I won't say anything more. Congratulate the Deputy Mayor. This is quite a bold thing to do, but probably in the current situation, probably a wise thing to do. Otherwise, we're just going to get a policy or something that we can't work. And yeah, thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can
yes.
I just, there shouldn't be a S after introduces.
There shouldn't be a which?
An S after introduces, and part B shouldn't have an S after introduce.
Seeks to introduce okay, plural, got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Spencer-Tao.
I have a question, and I apologise in advance if this has already been answered. My memory doesn't serve me well on this. Who currently pays for standard panel complaints? Do we get a bill for those?
We get a quarterly bill, I understand, don't we? CEO,
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we pay for every complaint, regardless of whether there's a finding or not. So I've signed off on a bill just recently for about $7,000 for matters to do with that have gone to standards panel.
So what the CO means is that every time a member of the public makes a complaint, founded or unfounded, a significant cost to ratepayers occurs. And as you heard, $7,000 for the last bill for the last round of complaints. In
that case, irrespective of where we go from here, I will be supporting this motion because we've got roughly $5,000, even if we do go with an external committee or person for I call it petty because you've got minor, I don't know a word less than minor. So if it's not good and if it's not bad enough to be a standards panel complaint, it's not bad enough it's not good enough to spend roughly $5,000 of ratepayers' money on investigating a petty complaint. So I support this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. I might just, if you don't mind, just provide a different point of view. I'll actually be voting against it, though I must say, Deputy Mayor, I actually support everything in item 2. The reason for that is that at the moment, as bad as it is, we have to make the best out of a really bad thing. And I think this council needs a complaints policy that is fit for purpose, no matter how bad it is. I think some of my concerns with the original one, B, was the one that we were debating earlier, was it required a committee of council to actually make a finding about our own peers in a bit of a star chamber. And then the awkwardness of that would be that committee would then, after making its recommendation to the full council, those same councillors on the committee would then actually have to make a decision on basically their own recommendation. It made no sense to me. I think essentially option A is not exactly what's required. I understand all the issues behind it, but I think we need to come away tonight with some sort of compromise. And so, I'll be proposing my alternate motion, but that will be in relation to everything that we have on here, except that we adopt A instead of B. And that means we come away tonight with two things. We will actually have a policy that is fit for purpose. It's not ideal, but it's fit for purpose. And also we can then write strongly to the Minister and outline our concerns, because there are many and they are varied. So as much as I concur with the sentiment expressed by the Deputy Mayor tonight, I think on behalf of our community, we need to reach a mature position. I'm not saying that the position of the Deputy Mayor was immature, anything but we need to reach a mature position where we come away with a policy once we have that policy in place, it will still be up to us to bring that policy back for review, to change it at times if we see fit. We can see how it works. If it doesn't work at all, we can amend it after a review by staff with our assistance. But to come away tonight with no policy at all, reforms, and I'd make the point that, considering, and I think all of them would be equally unhappy with the position they've been put in by the state government, but we just have to work within the structure that we have. I understand it well, unfortunately, but it's just not ideal. And I do take the point by complaint, my understanding of them from what I've read on the internet, because the department itself publishes all the findings. The broad majority of those result in normally just training. So these are way under that, and I think once people in the complaint that would fit in this policy, these are the most petty of petty complaints, and I'm really buoyed by the fact that the very first thing that will happen in the complaint, in the complaints policy in option A, is mediation. So the very first option, because these are the most petty of petty complaints, of agreement and work it out as elected members without the need to engage further in the complaints process. So I do speak against it, but I do, as I said, agree with part 2, A and B. I just don't think that tonight we should be coming away from here and resolving not to adopt any complaints policy at all. I think we just have the wrong option. We amended alternate amendment that will come up in a moment will be all of that, but just to adopt option A.
Do we know any other councils that hasn't adopted this policy? One question, I have a few.
Council, I don't know if Ms Bateman is aware at the back, but...
Ms Bateman, are you able to answer that question? Can I ask you to come to the microphone, please?
Has not adopted it. I'm not aware of
not
any
adopted
that haven't.
Anything else, Councillor Sabiri?
Yeah. Sort of relevant, I guess, is, I guess, my other question is, how many complaints have been lodged internally against?
The problem you have answering that question is there's section, is it 512 complaint against me? If it hasn't actually resulted in a sanction or there has been no finding, you can't speak about it. So
I'm not asking for it to be spoken about. I'm just wondering how many in my head, we're trying, I guess, trying to find out whether to agree with the Deputy Mayor and what he's. I mean, I'm not asking for details about that.
I get it. I'll ask the CEO to respond to that, but I'd say it probably wouldn't be relevant because we're not talking about minor breaches, so you would be talking about minor breaches. We're talking about a whole range of complaints we haven't dealt with at this low level. CEO, can you provide an answer to Councillor Sabiri? Is there...
I'll try, Mr Mayor. Just pointing out to Ms Cornish and the way through, so this policy is not effectively about matters that are contained within the rules of conduct. There have been a number of matters that have been put to the standards panel, I can't recall the specific number, that deal with breaches of the rules of conduct, some of which had findings for, some of which were dismissed. I'm not sure. There have been no, I can't talk about the complaints under this policy, as you appreciate, but they are behavioural complaints.
Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Bain first, then I'll come to Councillor Sweeney. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of questions as well. What are the legal ramifications if this motion is supported by Council? And secondly, has the Minister given any indication that he's willing to change his mind on this matter?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Minister's put some indication out through, and I circulate, I think you may have seen those proposed amendments or consideration of amendments to the Local Government Act, some changes to the policy. They're not going to rescind the nature of having the model code of conduct. That's clear, that's in, and Council's already adopted it. They may well consider a different mechanism by which complaints are investigated, but complaints will still need to be investigated.
And the legal ramifications?
Would there be any legal ramifications, CEO? CEO?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We can write it to the Minister and advise them of a position of Council. There are no legal ramifications for it. And just noted earlier on, in terms of complaints, if complaints are received, they'll still need to be processed, and they'll be processed as against CM 101, which is our current policy, in the absence of anything else.
Thank you. Councillor Sweeney?
I'm going to speak against this motion, which is rare because that means I'm agreeing with you, Mr Mayor, which is quite rare. But I am going to speak
just
against
for the record, are you sure you want to vote against it?
I'm going to speak against it. I understand the Deputy Mayor's point of view, and it's crossed my mind more than once in terms of trying to get some assistance from the state government with a better term of policy here. But the fact of the matter is that's just not going to happen. You know, we can ask all we want. and we need to make a decision on this, and we have to move forward. The state government aren't going to do this for us. They're not going to hold our hands, and they're not going to develop any policy to send it down to all the councils. It's just not going to happen, or they would have done it. So, you know, that leaves me with, unfortunately, it's not a great policy, but it's probably the best of a bad option. I would have preferred to go on with a committee. I don't think the council is the Mayor's trying to get through. It didn't work for us, I don't think, in the selection of the CEO process, so I don't like a full council. I would have preferred the committee, but as far as I'm concerned at this stage here, I think we have to move forward. We have to make a decision. This is about our code of conduct. This is about a complaints policy. If we don't move forward with this, then the question I ask probably the CEO is, what are we left with? Would we just fall back on our previous policy that we're operating under now? Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That was the answer just given to Councillor Bain. It's CM 101. Anything else you'd like to add, Councillor?
No, that's it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against it? Councillor Holland.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify something as well first, just so everybody's aware that if we go back and from number 2 and go back to number 1, effectively what all we're doing there is going from a committee to full council. But we're still getting the same thing. We're still being judging ourselves. It's just instead of just a committee of 4, we've got the whole council. Just be aware of that that's exactly what that means. The other part of it, yes, by all means, I'll be speaking in favour of this. The other part which I might help Councillor Bain with his about the legal ramifications. I don't think any of us here can judge on what legal ramifications there could be on here. None of us are lawyers. But the point being, in point 2 of this, 2A, it requests the Mayor to write to the Minister highlighting Council's concerns, so that we can put that in there anyway. So that'll answer that part of the question there. I won't go on either. I just can't support this I will be. I can't remember whether I said I'm supporting this or not.
No, I think you're saying you're voting against it and you can't support it. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm going to complete. I am supporting it, excuse me, Deputy Mayor. I am supporting this because I can't support having the complaints policy the way it's working in the moment. It's not workable. You can't have something, sorry Mr Mayor, but I would disagree with you in something. It is not fit for purpose. It is not fit for purpose, I don't think, at this present point in time. You can say it's the best we've got, which might be the way. You could say it might be. There was something else. There was something else too. But when the standard panel meet at the moment, they could come back and say, yeah, it's training, or one of the other ones. The main things is an apology. They're the main 2 things that you do, just to clarify. But I'm in support of this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak in favour. I'll be supporting this motion. Just a simple point. As Councillor Spencer Teo said, if the complaint is not serious enough, we shouldn't be wasting any of the ratepayers' money on pursuing those complaints. Moreover, as per the proposed local government changes, it says an inspector will be appointed by the minister to look into these sort of complaints, and the inspector can then further appoint monitors to mediate such complaints and stuff. So this policy has already been worked on in the proposed changes. So maybe 6 months' time or a year's time, there will be something. We don't have to waste our city's resources on putting up another policy. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak, or I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate? Deputy Mayor, did you wish to close debate?
No, I won't say anything further.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, we'll put the matter to the vote.
Foreshadowed motion for CC-041-21 has been carried. 6 in favour, 5 against. Those voting against, we have the Mayor, Councillors Bain, Parkinson, Sabiri and Sweeney.
Thank you, Councillors. The matter is carried. We move on now to CC-047 of 21. That being proposed road dedication, Lot 500 War Street, Cannington, and Lot 5080 Cecil Avenue. Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. Seconder, Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Sabiri.
I was a bit hesitant in accepting the officer's recommendation because last week when we were at the briefing, one of the councillors asked about having sufficient parking, and the response was that we as a city would like to see and encourage more walking and cycling, basically alternative modes of transport. So I do agree and think it's important to encourage that kind of transport. So I was I was looking at the item and thought, well, adding a road, how is that going to help? We all know adding roads really doesn't get rid of congestion. It's just adding a bit extra layer. So I had a chat with Director Bride, and we had discussion that the road won't, because I said we already have Seven Oaks, and that's 4 lanes basically. Why would we need another road? I'm convinced that the city will be working with main roads to make sure the proposed extension will probably be at lower speed, and hopefully we could make something similar to a safe active road, because we just don't need too many more roads that are not friendly for people to walk and cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I support this. I think it's important for the city centre activity plan, as the whole area needs to be accessible. So this is another way of getting in. And I went down there a few days ago, had a look at it. Happy with it, thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, if I may. I know that this item is only addressing formalisation of the land, but has the city done any preliminary work as to traffic numbers that might use this road? Thank you.
Director. Director Bright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might ask Mr. Troy Bosic, Manager of Development Engineering, to answer that one. Thank you.
Mr. Bosic.
Yes, just through the Mayor, we'll do some work to get those numbers with the metro network that's happening with the elevated rail. Had a meeting the other day with MetroNet. They're looking at the modelling in that whole area there to look at, with the new elevated rail at Wharf Street in particular. So we haven't got numbers. We can get something to you. Maybe we could set forward something to all councillors just once that information does come through. But, we expect the volumes to be somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 vehicles per day over time.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
So just to confirm, is this going to be classified as a road or a laneway?
It's a road, I believe, isn't it? Director Bride? Or Director Bowe? Either?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It'll be classified as a road reserve.
Thank you. Anyone else, councillor, before we put the matter to the vote? In the absence of anyone speaking against the matter, we'll put the matter to the vote. Sorry, what's happened?
Wrong button, Mr.
Can we
Mayor.
recall the vote, please? That's okay.
Thank you.
Yes, councillors will just ask you to vote again.
Motion CC-047-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We move to CC 049 of 21, the title of the report being Borrowings Required for the Year 2021-2022. The officer's recommendation is currently on screen. It's also on page 46 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for the item, please? I have a mover for the floor. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Nothing to add, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Jacobs?
I have zero to add too, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you, councillors. Put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-049-21 has been carried by absolute majority, 10 in favour, 1 vote against. Councillor Sabiri voting against.
Reading to the meeting his declaration and then leaving the meeting. CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In accordance with the standing orders, I declare a financial interest in this item, and that I'm currently appointed as City's interim CEO, and I've also previously made an application for the role.
I also declare a impartiality in relation to the matter. The letter signed today by the CCC and sent to us has been signed by a person that I was a former colleague of when I was a former police officer. Councillors, can I ask, the recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 55. I'll just wait till the CEO leaves the room. Can I just ask that the speakers are not operating in the councillors' foyer? Confirm the speakers are off. No speakers working outside of this chamber. Thank you. Councillors, the matter is on page 55. The agenda is on screen right now. Can I have a mover from the floor, please? A mover from the floor. Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo is moving the matter. Seconder? I'll move the matter from, I'll second the matter from the chair. Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo?
Nothing to say other than I think it's time to get the ball rolling on this. Thank you.
Councillors, I just wanted to, for the record, I do have a copy of, I did promise, we had a question up. We have written advice from the CCC this afternoon that we are able to publicly release the letter sent to us, which is dated the 15th of October and received by us after that date. I'll read the letter for the sake of the meeting, and then what I'll actually do is actually ask for the letter to be tabled, not as a sealed document, not as a confidential document, but as a public document in the record. And for the record, the correspondence we had received from the department is dealt with completely differently, and we're unable to release the Department of Local Government's correspondence. The letter is dated 15th of October. It's addressed to Mr Stephen. Correspondence from your predecessor, Mr Arthur Chiron, dated May 7, 2021, to the Corruption and Crime Commission, within which it was alleged that an unknown City of Canning councillor disclosed official information pertaining to a Chief Executive Officer application to a candidate, full stop. The Commission assesses information to determine if there is a reasonable suspicion of serious misconduct and makes a decision on what action the Commission will take to deal with the matter. Serious misconduct is defined in the Corruption, Crime and Misconduct Act of 2003 and includes corrupt conduct or serious criminal conduct occurring in the course of a public officer's duties. The Commission has carefully considered the information contained in the correspondence from your office. In addition to the information you have provided, further inquiries have been undertaken by the Commission. Full stop. After considering all the information available, the Commission is unable to form a reasonable suspicion of serious misconduct. Accordingly, the Commission will take no further action pursuant to CCM Act Section 33 in brackets 1 in brackets D. And it follows, should you require further information, provides a contact number which we've been asked to redact from the official record. It's signed John Tuttle, Deputy Director, Investigations. Councillors, I'll just ask for your indulgence. I've eaten up a bit of time releasing, but I think that's what we needed to do tonight. I'm patently unhappy with the outcome from the CCC, and as was relayed to me by a number of councillors, we come away from what we believed was going to be a thorough investigation with, we still have, I feel, a cloud of suspicion sitting over most of us, including myself, and I feel patently awkward about continuing with the CEO recruitment process, but I think proceed we must. And that doesn't in any way reflect on the members of this council or even the members of council who were present at the time that this matter was last considered by council and are no longer members of this council. So no person should make or draw any insinuation by any matter other than the content of that letter. And I would make the point, that where it says they have been unable to form a reasonable suspicion of serious misconduct, I'm not absolutely certain what that means. It doesn't absolutely say that they're unable to come to a conclusion that there was any misconduct at all. But the reality is, with the current system that we work in, because there's been a passage of time greater than 6 months, even if tomorrow we were to find that there was minor misconduct, not serious misconduct, but minor misconduct by a councillor during the process, the 6-month period in which a complaint can be made has now expired. In other words, the person, if that was alleged to have been party to the complaint, the councillor who was allegedly talking to the candidate is no longer able to be sanctioned at all. So not proceeding tonight, and as awkward as that is and as unpalatable as that sits with all of us, including myself, what it means is there's absolutely no point not proceeding, because the only two authorities that can take any action are the CCC and the department. Both of them have come out and said that they are unable or unwilling to continue with any further investigations, and we don't know what investigations they undertook, but that is the conclusion, and they're certainly not going to change their mind. And in the absence of a serious misconduct, we now have no further option to, even if we're aware of it, to make any claim in relation to minor misconduct. Now, I know that doesn't sit well with this council, and I know that we'll all be disappointed. No one is more disappointed than I am. I came out strongly, as you all well know, to say that we need to get to the bottom of this, and 6 months later, we're no closer to the bottom of it than we were when the complaint was lodged with the CCC. So I'm patently disappointed. I know the community would be disappointed. I think that the investigation or the result of the investigation, if indeed an investigation took place, is not in keeping with, I feel, the expectations of the wider community. So I am disappointed on behalf of the community. In relation to this matter in front of us, though, I feel that we must proceed. There was a question asked earlier about Lester Blades. I hope that there won't be an amendment to that, because in my mind, Lester Blades are heroes in this matter, because quite frankly, they stepped forward when they didn't have to, and Jeff Blades showed great integrity by approaching me in the first instance to actually report behaviour which he felt was inappropriate. So we, could not really, I feel, find any other group, any other consultant that would display that same level of integrity. And I don't think that Lester Blades should be punished for having stepped forward. It would be preposterous, I think, that if they hadn't stepped forward, we would have allowed them to continue. But by showing great integrity and reporting what they felt they should, we would then remove them from the process. Up until the point that the allegation was made, I think all of us were very comfortable with the advice provided not only by our senior staff internally, but also by Jeff Blades from Lester Blades. They are a reputable and well-known group, and I hope that Council will support the motion as it is. The only thing we need to do, is, of course, is to appoint a selection panel, which will include the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, and up to 3 other councillors, and an independent member who will be appointed at a future council meeting. So I speak strongly in support of the recommendation you have in front of you, and I hope that to make this as expedient as we can, that we can work with the recommendation that we have in front of us and just move on, because we have to. We have to appoint a CEO. I mean, this council is a Tier 1 local government council. We cannot continue as we are without a CEO. We need to put this disappointment behind us, and we need to actually engage with the process again. And it won't actually be until sometime next year that we actually get to a position where we will be able to actually undertake that action, because it's going to take an awful long time to get to that point. Governance, can I just ask, sorry, I'll stop speaking on the matter. Can I just ask in relation to item 6 in the recommendation, do we propose to ask for, to deal with that now? And call for nominations? Councillors, I have the selection panel at the moment comprises the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, and up to three councillors. Are there councillors here who would like to nominate? I have a nomination from Councillor Singh. Are there any other councillors that would like to nominate? Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo has nominated. Any other councillors? If not, we'll leave it at just a group of 4.
I'd like to
Councillor
nominate Councillor Sweeney, if he would.
I'm not sure you can nominate Councillor Sweeney. I think Councillor Sweeney would need to nominate himself. Councillor Sweeney.
Mr Mayor, can I just make a comment on previous comments that you just said? Is that, when do I do that? Can I do that now?
No, what we'll do is we'll just go to the selection panel, and that will just complete this, and then we can do whatever we want with the recommendation. So we have a nomination for Councillor Singh and Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo have nominated to form part of the group along with myself and the Deputy Mayor. Are there anyone else?
I'll go on it.
Councillor Jacobs, fabulous. That is 5 members. That is 3 members of council. Councillors, governance, we will then, those 3 positions having been filled, there's probably no need to go to a ballot. Can we just open the matter up for debate then? Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo moved the matter. I then spoke in favour of it. Councillor Sweeney, you would like to be heard?
Yeah, just in reply to your comments before, the letter from the CCC and in fact from the Local Government Sport and Cultural Industries is not really helpful to clearing the names of councillors. It's just inconclusive. And as far as Lester Blade's concerned, my view is at the moment is that, and I have to be very careful here because we're not under confidentiality, so I can't, so that's a problem because there are things that I need to say and I can't unless we go under confidential, and we're not doing that, and we're not doing that at the moment. But I will say this, and I think I can say this, that Lester Blades is, or was, or still is, a subject of this investigation, just like all the councillors and the administration staff that were in their room on that night. What we know is information was, confidential information was leaked. That's the only thing that we know. Everyone else is a subject of this investigation, including Lester Blades on the night. We're all subjects of this. So I just don't know how we can move forward unless there is some clearance from somebody, government agency, to clear our names, because we were all, on that night, or on the 10th of May, we were named. And I don't know how any of us can just sort of say, well, that's all okay. We were named and our reputations were damaged. So it's not conclusive for me. Lester Blades is in the same bucket as the rest of us, including the administration staff that were here that night. So I just don't know.
To be clear though, you're speaking against the recommendation, is that what you're doing?
Well, at the moment I am, yes.
Okay.
I'm speaking against it. And I would like some further discussion. And there's things that I want to bring up. So this is another issue. There's things that I do want to bring up, but I can't because of confidentiality. So I did bring that up. So I bring that up later, or do I bring that up? There's nothing I can do about it, is there?
Well, there are a number of things you can do about it. I mean, you can be very careful about what you say. I mean, you shouldn't be saying anything that's defamatory. You know, if you should be able to speak to this matter, and we're working very hard to separate the disappointment that the entire council feels about the outcome. But Councillor Sweeney, as I said, we have gone as far as we can. There's not going to be a royal commission into this. We have come to a dead stop. There's nothing else. So, mulling over what happened and working through what could have or would have or should have happened, it's going to have no benefit to the decision of council tonight, because we just have to make a decision on what we have in front of us. So certainly you can say whatever you like, but you can't say anything that's defamatory here, and you can't say anything that's defamatory under confidential cover. Speaking confidentially doesn't remove your obligation.
No, I haven't said that, and I'm very aware of that, and I'm very careful in how I choose the words that I use. But I'm just saying that we shouldn't be putting Leicester Blades anywhere else in this argument, because they are in the same boat as us, and I'm sure they probably feel the same way. They were probably investigated by the CCC like all of we were. And I know, personally, I haven't received a letter from the CCC saying what the outcome of the investigation was. I was asked to be part of that investigation. If I'm asked to be part of an investigation, then I feel that I should be, at the very least, given a letter to say what the outcome of that investigation was. That hasn't happened. So anyway, I've said my piece. That's how I feel. I just speak against this at this stage. I don't know how we can move on unless we get some further information to clear our names, all of us. And particularly for the members that aren't here at the moment, that don't have that opportunity to speak up for themselves.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak in favour of the matter? Anyone wish to speak on the matter before we put it to the vote? Councillor Holland.
Mr Mayor, I'll speak in favour of the motion purely and simply because of just what you said, the 6 months is up. So I understand Councillor Sweeney's point of view, and I totally agree with a lot of them. But we can't, that can't be retried now. The 6 months statute of limitations, if that is correct, Mr Mayor, is up. What I will say, I don't like the whole procedure that was going on here, and I'd like to put it on the record that I didn't. When we were told this was going to be investigated, this was bigger than Watergate. It was a shocker. It was the worst thing that ever happened. I remember your speaking on it, Mr Mayor, and we've come back from the CCC saying unable to form a reasonable suspicion of serious misconduct. It's not to say whether there was minor misconduct or anything else like this, because the report was of serious misconduct. That's what we reported from the CEO and you, Mr Mayor. So this is in direct reference to what the complaint was that was put to the CCC by the city and by you, Mr Mayor. And they've come back unable to form a reasonable suspicion of serious misconduct. I read that as nothing to see here. That's what I read it, but I don't know. I'm also very, very concerned and in totally agreement with Councillor Sweeney regarding my reputation. We've got, no one from the CCC asked me for what happened, or did I do it, or did I not do it. No one came to me and asked me anything whatsoever. Someone from the Department of Local Government did, but no one from the CCC did. So you brought up, Mr Mayor, don't know how far the inquiries went or anything, which comes back to the point, nothing to see here. And I don't know whether you're going to, well, you're not going to agree with me, Mr Mayor. I don't like the way this was done in the first place. It was humongous. It was all over the papers. You were spouting how bad it was and all this. And then we've got something unable to form a reasonable suspicion of serious misconduct. Councillor Sweeney's right. The other councillors, I'm not saying whoever's done it, but there's 14 of us here, not 14, there was 11 of us at that time, that we've all got that solid expression of, well, was it me? Was it him? Was it who? Who was it? And everyone's saying over there, well, was it him? Was it him? And we've got nowhere. As far as Leicester Blades, yes, I would disagree with Councillor Sweeney. I haven't got a problem bringing them back here. I just don't like the whole way this was handled at all, and I'm going to put that on the record here.
I'll just make a personal statement just in relation to that, and as you would know, under the CCM Act, under the Crime and Corruption Commission's own Act, I'm required to report any suspicion of serious misconduct, so reporting that was not an option. I'm required by law to do it, and the CEO similarly. If we don't, we're actually guilty of a crime. So just to put that to bed, the handling of the complaint was that a complaint was made. It was prefaced on the fact that, I'm not sure I ever spoke about Watergate, but I take your point, but I think I prefaced on the fact that if the allegation is proven, and the allegation at the moment has not been proven in the absence of sufficient evidence, and it has stopped where it has stopped. So I would believe that, I just wanted to make that personal statement, since you actually said that the handling of the matter, you don't agree with it, and that reflects on both myself and the former CEO who reported the matter. Councillor Jacobs. And councillors, look, honestly, I know we all want to talk about the complaint, what the CCC should have done and would have done, but can we try to just keep it to just the... Yeah, thank you.
I intend to do exactly that, Mr Mayor. The past is the past, and that was, as far as I'm concerned, it's been dealt with. I'm pleased that we've had some advice that we can proceed. I think the critical questions we've got to ask ourselves is, can we just go on and do nothing? No, we have an interim CEO. We need to make the process. I think this is of looking at this. I think it's a process. Look, every process is imperfect, but it's an important process that we need to do. I've looked over it. I'm satisfied that it's fairly robust. I think it's good that we've got a selection panel, because the more people are on the selection panel, the difficult it is to make consensus. I hope that the panel can be a success, and yeah, I don't think I have anything more to add except that I support the officer's recommendation, and I think it's important that we move forward in this process, because we need to find we've got interim CEO at the moment, which is great, but we need to, under the law, we can only have him, if I'm correct, Mr Mayor, for a year. And then you have to have a CEO. So if we don't go now, when are we going to go? You're basically going to be out of time, because it's going to take a good 4, 5, 6 months. And yeah, that's all I've got to say on this matter. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against? Just stand by just one moment. Did very late. Is it required? That's right. Yeah, no, I hadn't planned to, because we got the advice afterwards. The CEO was, Director Bow was just discussing the confidentiality of the letter from the CCC. They had proposed that a motion be put. It's now redundant, since we've got in writing advice from the CCC themselves that we could have and we have released that document. In the absence, Councillor Swen, you've got a question?
Yeah, I've just got one question. Look, and I don't have, what you said, Mr Mayor, is quite right. You have got an obligation, and you reported it. But my question is why were we named before the investigation even started by the CCC? That's my question.
Look, we had a CEO recruitment process that was in full flight. We had the entire council were members of the CEO recruitment committee. How could we not publicly provide, and we had spent money already on the process, how could we not provide a reasonable explanation to the community for ending it without any notice? Because that's what we did. So, tonight, Craig, we're not here to discuss the handling of it. If you've got issues with the handling of it, perhaps we could talk about that privately, or you could put it in writing, but tonight's not to thrash about with things that happened previously, so I'm not sure what benefit will come from that, but that's the explanation that I could give you.
Yeah, that wasn't my question. That wasn't the answer I was seeking, Mr Mayor. That wasn't anything what I was talking about. I was talking about why we were named before the investigation started. That was my question. There was no judicial process.
I don't think anyone was named.
There was no fair process.
Hang on, I'm a member of council as well.
Well, I feel I was named. I feel I was part of the
Well, you weren't named. I don't remember Councillor Craig Sweeney being named.
Okay. Well,
Councillor, we need to move on with this, okay? Your question is irrelevant.
Well, I don't think it is.
Well, I don't care what you think,
anyway,
but it's irrelevant. I ask you to please stop speaking. Thank you. Councillors, does anyone else wish to speak before I ask Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo to close debate? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Most of it's already been covered by other councillors, but I do believe that Leicester Blades are probably the best people for this job. They've displayed honesty and integrity with, you know, as you put it, whistleblowing. As people have said, we need to move on. There's no doubt that the system is flawed, it's broken. Before us tonight is a petty complaint system, and here we are dealing with having to look at a major, serious complaint that has ended up where it is. So it just, you know, confirms the disappointment in the process and in the system, as far as I'm concerned. But as Councillor Jacobs mentioned, time's not on our side. We've got 7 months to complete this process. Let's get it started. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, we'll put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Motion CC-050-21 has been carried by absolute majority, 10 in favour, with Councillor Sweeney voting against.
Thank you. We move on to 052 of 21. I might just invite the CEO to rejoin us. Governance, can I ask someone ask the CEO to rejoin the meeting? Oh, okay. Councillor Spencer Teo, thank you for that. We move on to CC-052 of 21, the monthly financial report of October 2021. The recommendation is on page 79 of the agenda and is on screen. Councillors, can I have a mover for that item, please? Councillor Bain, thank you, and Councillor Holland as a seconder. Councillor Bain, you got anything you'd like to add?
Nothing further to add, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Holland?
Mr. Mayor, I will say that I am in favour of this motion. Remember, I said that's what should be said. It's not just moving the motion. I'm in favour and I have nothing further to say.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Councillors, anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote as CEO Kane returns to the room? Thank you, councillors. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-052-21 has been carried, 10 in favour, noting that Councillor Spencer Teo was out of the room for the vote.
Thank you. We move to item CC-053 of 21. The report name is a budget review as at the 31st of October 2021. The officer's recommendation is on screen and also on page 115 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please? Councillor Jacobs and a seconder, the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Jacobs, have you anything you'd like to add?
I have nothing further to add. I think it's great. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor, are you in favour?
I have nothing to say, Mr. Mayor.
You're in favour? Thank you. Councillors, we'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-053-21 has been carried by absolute majority with all 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move to item 13.3 on tonight's agenda, the responsible officer being Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Canning Development. The item number is CD 033 of 21. The report title is Application for Development Approval, Addition of Place of Worship and Community Purpose Uses to Existing Educational Establishment at 22 Dalton Place, in brackets Lot 902, close brackets, in the suburb of Wilson. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 135 of tonight's agenda, and I do have from Councillor Mark Bain, I have a declaration here. Mark, did you want to read that to the meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm declaring an impartiality interest in that an extended family member attends the premises for education purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, can I ask for a mover, please, for that matter? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. Seconder? Seconder? Councillor Bain, thank you. Councillor Jacobs.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I keep my comments very brief. I support the councillor's recommendation. I think it's important that, I think it's quite detailed and, you know, there's definitely a need in that area for the development approval for the proposed addition of a place of worship and community use. It's been there for some time, and I think it's my understanding that this is just formalising what has already been going on for some time, and I think that the requirements are quite specific, and I think that gives certainty to the people that want to worship, but also we're not going to have like 1,000 people there because it's quite stipulated, limited to 170 people. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Bain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. After much consideration, I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. There's a significant and comprehensive list of recommendations attached to the approval. It is my hope that these regulations will go a long way to alleviating the legitimate concerns of nearby residents. The City has provided assurance that they'll follow up any issues or complaints and that their compliance team will visit the site and monitor operations. The operational management plan limits the number of attendees and activities that can take place and makes clear the behaviour expected on site. There are many City of Canning residents and families who attend the premises for religious and community purposes. What is needed in this difficult situation is compromise, which this highly conditional approval seeks to provide. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bain. Anyone wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Holland.
Well, I've got a question, Mr. Mayor. I can't quite work this out. Number 10. No more than 170 persons, I think you just mentioned, Councillor Jacobs, at any one time are to occupy the place of worship through the duration of the development. So what does that mean? At the end of the development they can have 3 million? I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, that's for the life of the development. So as long as that use continues, that's the maximum number of people that can attend the site.
It doesn't mean development in the literal sense, I think. For the record, the answer is no, they can't have 3 million people there.
It's not a big thing. I think they could have chosen a bit better work than development. It means the development while you're developing the place. I think that's quite vague there.
The CEO and Director Bright agrees that what we might do for the sake of clarity is put the word approval after development, so it talks about the development approval rather than just development. Can you just explain to Councillor Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we're advertising the application of a development approval. So it is development approval just specifically for the purpose. If we put the word approval at the end, it's quite clear it's for just the approval, not any other standard development on the site.
Does anyone else have a question or wish to speak on the matter before we put it to the vote? Thanks, Councillors. There's no need to close, Councillor Jacobs. We'll just put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Motion CD-033-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda has already been dealt with. That was EN 026 of 21. At item 13.5, the responsible officer is Dr. Sarah McQuaid, the Director of Canning Community. The report number is CO008 of 21, the title of the report being Youth Engagement. The officer's recommendation is on screen and is also on page 182 of the agenda. Councillor Holland, I think you have a declaration in relation to this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Is that impartiality? Is it
That's right.
The interest? Sorry, I got confused sometimes.
Impartiality interest.
Purely and simply because my wife actually runs the vet program at Willerton High School. But I don't think I have to excuse myself
Absolutely
from
not.
the vote.
No, absolutely not. Thank you for your declaration. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for that? A mover, first of all. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconder for the item. Seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. Deputy Mayor, have you got anything you'd like to add?
I won't take too much time given the time. I just want to thank staff for their works to date. Youth engagement has been an issue for the city since during my time on the city. And it's from my conversations with staff, it's fantastic to hear the positive stories and the fact that you're enacting new measures that are directly engaging the youth and having them involved in council activities and city activities. I look forward to seeing what progresses over the next year and further beyond.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer, Teo, have you got anything you wish to add?
Nothing more to add, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the matter, or simply noting and receiving? Thank you, councillors. We'll put it to the vote.
Motion CO-008-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. On the agenda, the next item has already been dealt with. That was notice of motion 010 of 21. And we now move to urgent business at item 15. There is none. We propose a confidential matter in relation to CC 051 of 21. That's interim chief executive officer arrangements. I'm going to ask the CEO and I think Director Bowe are both making declarations. Director Bowe, first of all.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As submitted, I've declared an impartiality interest. I've had legal advice to the effect that I may not have an impartiality interest, but there may be a perception I do, and as such, we'll declare an impartiality interest. I've worked with Mr. Kane for 11 months. 5 of that have been as a direct report to him.
Thank you. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In accordance with standing orders, this item I declare a financial interest, that I'm currently appointed as the city's interim CEO and have previously been an applicant for this role.
Thank you, CEO. Yeah, we will as soon as you leave. Thank you. As the CEO slowly leaves the room. Thank you, councillors. We now have... Councillors, the time now is, let me see, it's regrettably, it's 9:48 p.m, 9:48 p.m, and we are now reopening the meeting to the public, and I'll read aloud. Thank you, councillors. If I could just ask for some patience, please, from some of you who have completely jumped the gun. Can I, thank you, just order, please, councillors. I'll just read the councillor's decision. Council has resolved that Council extends the appointment of Mr. Stephen Kane as Interim Chief Executive Officer until the appointment and commencement of the City's Chief Executive Officer, but no longer than 25 June 2022, offering the same remuneration package as offered for the period 26 June attendants and also to staff. Thank you, staff.